Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of the MinnMax Show, place about games, friends, getting better, and waving. My name is Ben Hansen, joined by Kelsey Lewin.
Hello, it is 6:22 a.m. right now.
The beauty is, I was thinking recently about podcasts because it's all I listen to and it's all I think about all day, other than my family. But I was thinking recently about
a close second.
And this isn't a critique, Kelsey, of your opening lines, I swear. But I was thinking, I think ideal podcasts should exist outside of time and place.
I think I agree with that.
Yeah.
I mostly was just trying to get some sympathy points and make sure that everybody was like, wow, what a team player.
Absolutely.
Incredible.
If the YouTube comments aren't filled with, wow, Kelsey woke up at 5 a.m. to be on a podcast talk about video games, wow, I don't know what the point of YouTube is. But we're also joined by Jacob Geller.
Gobble, gobble.
And the casino of podcasting, Kyle Hilliard.
The casino?
That's right. Okay. Here we go, everybody. On this episode...
Hold on, I gotta say, bless you, Kelsey. Thank you, Kelsey. Jacob, you don't get any thanks because it's basically like afternoon for you.
Yeah, right East Coast, baby.
On this episode of the podcast, consider it a prologue, if you will, to the Game of the Year debates here at MinnMax. We air our full discussions. They're going to be happening in December, but we're at that time, especially with Thanksgiving break here in the States, where we might have a little more time than usual to play some games. And we're getting down to the wire. We're getting down to the point of I need to lock in the games I am going to play before our Game of the Year debates. So in this episode, we're going to run through games we recommend each other to play before the debates, games we recommend the community to play in general from this year, all that good stuff. Then we're going to be joined by special guest, Danny O'Dwyer from NoClip, who just produced a documentary with Valve, hired by Valve to produce a documentary on the history of Half-Life, the first game in honor of its 25th anniversary. So we're going to unpack how that happened, what that's like. It's technically the third Half-Life documentary he's made, probably more videos than that, just about Half-Life, so it'll be fun to unpack all that stuff with him.
Thank you for saying that, because when that happened, I was like, oh, that's really cool. But I swear I watched a Half-Life documentary that he made.
Yeah, but it was very noticeably not involving Valve. And so now it's the full flip where no one else is allowed to dance, just Valve. And then back after the show, we have great questions from the community. Hey, thanks to everybody watching us live at the Backstage Pass tier. Y'all can throw in suggestions and stuff. We read that chat for stuff that we miss when we're talking about things to play before we get to the big Game of the Year debate. Jacob, how you feeling about Game of the Year stuff this year?
Really excited. I'm excited, I think, more so for the awards than for the list.
Yeah.
They're just a lot of moments that I want to talk about. There are a lot of biggest news, dumbest things. I've got my my list going where something will pop into my head and I'll write it down and be like, okay, got to bring that up.
I'm so excited.
I thought you meant the Game Awards at first, as opposed to the 210s, and I was judging you kind of hard for a minute.
I was down
really?
as not excited for the Game Awards.
I gotta say, one is a lot easier. I just get to sit back and eat pizza with Sarah and Leo and crack wise at the Game Awards compared to having 30 pages of notes and stressing out.
Somehow we record those end of year podcasts for 16 hours and the Game Awards still feels longer. Watching the Game Awards feels like it is the longest thing I do all year.
No, I'm with you on the awards because it is fun just to try and figure out where's the best place for some stuff. There's some things, without tipping my hand too much, Unity, where I think about is that biggest news or is that dumbest thing? Sometimes there's overlap there and thinking about what is the best for each category. And dumbest thing, I think is more fun if it's a specific thing in the game. And then it's always that question too for best moment. I'm maybe more of a stickler than anybody else with this, but I like that moment to be as small as possible. Because sometimes it's easy to be best moment, chapter 6. And it's well, yeah, but I like having that moment of oh my God, this hit me like a ton of bricks right here. You know what I mean? So it's weird to try and figure out what goes where for all those different awards.
The end of Like a Dragon Gaiden is what
That's right, Kyle. That better be number one.
You finished it?
I was up late playing last night. Yeah. Nice.
That's a good one. I mean, I know we talked about it a little bit last week, but that is definitely one that I have installed on my PS5, and it's what level of priority should I give to Like a Dragon Gaiden? And honestly, we talked about it a little bit last week too, but a lot of it comes down to is Jacob Geller going to push for that harder than Ishin, and so therefore I shouldn't worry about Ishin and I should just focus on Gaiden fully right now? And is it to that level that I should have it in my pocket.
And when are you going to play Bayonetta? I mean, it's all...
Well, there's always time for Bayonetta Origins. No matter what, Bayonetta Origins is getting done. No doubt about it.
Spoilers, I'm not going to be pushing for Ishin. So, like, if you want to play a Like a Dragon game, Gaiden's the one, I think.
And do you think, is it one of those things, is it to the level of, like, you won't sleep at night unless Like a Dragon Gaiden's on the 210s? Ooh.
I don't know. It's more. It is truly so about that moment for me that like that's going to be a higher priority than like the game as a whole.
Right. Kyle, where's your enthusiasm at for Gaiden?
Oh, I don't think I would lose sleep if it didn't make the 210s.
Okay.
But I really liked it, and I feel like, not to like derail us, but listening to Jacob talk about it recently on the MinnMax show, I feel like I'm in the same exact boat where it's like this was me sort of fully putting my foot in the door of the Like a Dragon series, and like I get it, and it didn't take like a 60-hour commitment. You know, I got like I'm happy with it, and like I get Kuryu now, and I think I'm gonna play Infinite Wealth like almost for sure.
I hope so. Kelsey, how are you feeling about Game of the Year stuff? Where are you at prep wise?
Oh my God, my list of things that I wish I had more time for is infinite. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I'm squeezing in like probably 3 hours of several games kind of at the end here to try to round out the list more. But it always feels weird. I mean, you talked about this a little bit last week, but it always feels weird arguing for a game that you like, for or against a game you didn't actually finish.
I know. Yeah, it feels gross.
The reality of this year is just like I could not have finished all of these games. It's just, and there's so many that I have enjoyed so much, regardless of whether or not I have rolled credits. So I don't know, but I'm really looking forward to this discussion because fitting 20 games at the top here is going to be ridiculous, and like entire genres are going to be difficult to put anywhere on there. Like I might be one of the only people arguing for any JRPGs this year, and
yeah, well, honestly,
it's
Kelsey,
a good year.
No, it's a great year, and it's it gets tough because I know Xenoblade Chronicles 3's DLC, and that's one where it's like, okay, I mean, DLC, the way we phrase it is like if it fundamentally changed the game, but it's an addition to an old game, like it should be in contention, but like. Kelsey, I'm so curious to see.
I know it'll be me alone up there.
Okay,
for that,
I know it will be, but you're better for it. But then I'm so interested in like Octopath Traveler 2, like that level of RPG that you love this year, but like I don't know where that's being pushed compared to Xenoblade. Not that only one JRPG is making the list, but like compared to Star Ocean, like I don't know how you're ranking all those in order of priority at this point.
Well, and that's the other thing too, is like. You and I would have an alliance on Star Ocean, but right. I don't think I am loving the heck out of that game, but it is both a remake and not my favorite JRPG that came out this year. So like, do I push that one harder just because I know I can get that further up the list, or do I go, you know what I mean?
And honestly, it is like the whole alliance thing I think is a real phenomenon, because I was thinking about like, okay, what games do I squeeze in? I can probably fit one RPG in before the Game of the Year debates. I started a Super Mario RPG. I definitely need to give it more time.
Smart.
Yeah. I'm not head over heels yet, but I definitely want to stick with it. But then it's a matter of like, okay, Star Ocean, it's a remake. Like, and it's always nice to highlight something newer than a remake. But then again, it's like my heart of hearts. I want to play Star Ocean 2 more than anything else at the moment right now. And then, Kelsey, you sent me a message then earlier this week where you're like, hey, if you want to do more Star Ocean 2 content, I'm still playing it and really enjoying it. And that was like a speed boost for me. We're like, wait a minute, do we have a Star Ocean alliance here? Like, should I prioritize and roll credits on Star Ocean 2 so that Kelsey and I can mop up and get it to the top of the 210s?
It's probably going to be in my top 10, but I don't know how high up it is going to be in my 10. And that is not I think everyone knows this about this year. That is not in any way, shape, or form, a mark on the quality of Star Ocean. Because I actually think for a remake, it's very good too. Like I've been reading more about the differences between the original and this, and I think they've done a lot of really awesome things to improve it. But but
it's tough.
How far? No, it's not even like crazy high on my personal top 10, I guess is what I'm saying. And I love it.
Okay. It's a sign of a good year. Yeah, I mean, the remake thing, it is interesting. I feel like remakes are inherently dinged a little bit, even though we gave Game of the Year to Final Fantasy VII Remake and Resident Evil 2 Remake. There's still a part of me that's like, look, we all love Resident Evil 4 Remake, but I also feel guilty about giving more honors to Resident Evil 4 on the list of 210s. You know, like how, Jacob, if you had to guess, predict right now, where is Resident Evil 4 Remake going to be on the big list?
In the first 10, but pretty high up.
Okay. High up meaning
high meaning like close to 10.
Yeah, like an 8 or a 9
1.
type of thing.
Yeah.
I think that feels right. I think it feels right. For as awesome as that game is, that feels about right. Kyle, what are you going to be pushing? What do you want more people to play before we get to the debates?
Yeah, I was looking through the list, and it's funny because you guys are talking about JRPGs, and it's not a JRPG, but I really like Sea of Stars a lot.
Yeah,
and it's not a remake, but it is definitely like inspired by JRPGs, and I mean it is my favorite RPG of the year, and I actually played uncharacteristically quite a few this year.
Yeah,
like I've been playing Star Ocean, I played Paper Mario, but Sea of Stars, I don't know, it just I have it in my really high in my personal top 10.
I think,
and I don't know. I know folks have played it, but I don't know if anyone finished it. It's like a game that like I don't usually say like, oh, you should be a completionist. You know, it's like play a game as much as you want and have a good time with it. But this was a game that I was really thankful that I did the completionist run, just from like a narrative perspective. Like I was really happy that I went and did everything in the game and saw the true proper conclusion. And I loved it. I really love that game a lot.
Yeah, there's a part of me that's debating, like, okay, do I play more Sea of Stars or play more Super Mario RPG? And the fact that, Kyle, you called it Paper Mario instead of Super Mario RPG leads me to believe that maybe I should focus on Sea of Stars if it's coming down to the wire between those two.
Oh, no, for sure. I definitely put Sea of Stars over Super Mario RPG, for sure.
You had to think about it again.
I had to pause. I definitely had to pause.
That's not a great sign.
Wait, why is that not a great sign?
I don't know. It's just funny to always forget the name of the game.
Paper Mario is the sequel to Super Mario RPG. I mean, it's not. Absolutely.
No, it is. It's called Paper Mario, or it's called like Mario RPG Paper Mario in Japan.
Is it really? Because I remember like the working title was like Super Mario RPG too, but then I thought that was just like the press coming up with like, what do we call this thing?
I mean, it is structurally like the same, basically. I mean, it's just like they just had like a new visual style for Paper Mario is what it came down to. But like structurally, they're pretty much the same.
Yeah. Jacob, what do you want more people to play before the end of the year?
Okay, so what do I want more people to play? Not myself. Have you heard, I know everyone on this podcast has, of a little game called Tchia, a game inspired by New Caledonia. That game, I have been getting some footage of it for my own purposes.
Yeah.
That game is so good and so wonderful and charming and just kind of like full of character and life. It is like there are so many things about it that are just like, gosh, I wish I got this feeling from more games.
Yeah, just the feeling of heart in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah, that kind of like that this was a game made by people, and those people had like very specific things that they wanted to include, and they did. Whether it's like 3 different instruments that you play for like multiple dance parties throughout the game, or like the little mini games where you're making food, and like whenever there's a plate of food in the game, it's not like kind of abstract. It's like a very specific dish that like someone like ate and took a picture of and was like, I have to put this in the game because this food is so important to like, the experience of being here.
Yeah, I'm with you. That's one that I'm probably 60% of the way through. And it's like, I should just do a marathon stream and just blast through the rest of Tchia, because it is a shame.
Yeah, I mean, if you're mainlining, it's short. It's like most of the hours that you could spend with that game are in like finding collectibles, but like there are not that many main story missions.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a game earlier this year which I played in full and stuff. And I, even at the time, knowing what the rest of the year looked like, I was like, we got to make sure we don't forget this one at the end of the year. Because I mean, it's what was it, like March or something like that? I think March or April.
I think
it was pretty early.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just a joyful game that is very much like you're saying, Jacob. A group of people. It's just like, hey, we made this thing for you to have fun in. Like, go do what you want in there.
Yeah. On a similar island front, a game that came out in January, I believe, but A Space for the Unbound is one that I hope people have played.
This is a big one on my list of I have kind of went back to that game throughout the year, and it's like, I think it's interesting, but it never really grabs me, but I know how much you like the ending.
I think it's cool.
So I do want to finish it.
Yeah. I agree that it's like, okay, you kind of get in the rhythm, got it, and then the ending really elevated it for me. But there's a lot of running around in the streets until you get to that point, But I do think it's awesome. If you don't remember Space for the Unbound, it's pixel art set in Indonesia in the 90s, kind of a surreal story, but also just a lot of heart for exploring these environments and a lot of variety packed in there. Kyle, I heard you reference it at a certain point, maybe it was on the Game Informer show, but like, did you finish Space for the Unbound?
Yeah, my daughter and I, we like played it together.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay.
And it's funny because I've been watching and enjoying the Scott Pilgrim anime on Netflix, and like it made me think of the Space for the Unbound. Like it sort of reignited it in my head. I was like, oh yeah, that game. That was a good, affecting game. I don't think I feel as strongly about it as you.
Okay.
But as is the case with all year-end discussions, it's like, it's still a great game, even if it, it's like I don't want to come off as not liking that game, but yeah, I like the surrealist sort of nature of it. Like the Scott Pilgrim of it all is like, you sort of brush off. It's like, oh, you have like a teleportation device in your head, and that's just part of the plot, and we don't have to delve into it too much. I feel like A Space for the Unbound has a lot of that kind of stuff, which I like.
Yeah. Kelsey,
so I bought the physical version of that game, which PlayAsia was selling. It's like a Asia region only kind of thing, specifically because you guys seemed so hot on it. So I've put almost no time into it, but I have opened it and put it in my Switch.
Okay, all right.
Fired it up, so
we'll take it. That's a win. Kelsey, other than Xenoblade Chronicles 3 and its DLC, what are you screaming for?
And
people
every
to play?
Other Xenoblade Chronicle game, because it seems important to really appreciate the DLC.
Yeah, I know that's. It's one of those things where it's like maybe it's a better greatest moment or greatest thing or something than it is game, because if you don't have the context of 3 entire games and their respective DLCs, like
it's tough.
You're probably not going to get what I got out of it.
Yeah.
I mean, we had a lot of good RPGs this year, but I don't know. I don't want to. Ben, I think you should put more time into Octopath 2, but I'm not going to try to convince this panel to play 80 hours of Octopath Traveler 2 either.
You're convincing the audience right now, to don't forget about Octopath Traveler 2. Yeah,
the thing is, and this is true of a lot of RPGs, but this is especially true of the Octopath Traveler game. I mean, there's been 2, but this was true of the first one too. Is like, you do have to do a tiny bit of slogging to like introduce all 8 characters separately and get them together, and that process is it's good and it's fun, but in a year this packed, it's like if you feel caught up otherwise and you want to use the remainder of your year on this, highly recommend. Incredible game. But do I recommend that over playing like 5 more games before the discussions? I don't know.
Right.
But it does get incredibly, incredibly good kind of at the midway point and towards the end, as all these characters really are interacting a lot more and you're seeing a lot deeper into all of their stories. I think I was hooked earlier than you have been, Ben.
Yeah.
I don't think it took me that long to start, getting into these characters and stuff. And I don't know where you started or wwho you added to your party first.
I think I was a thief in the dungeons starting out.
Okay.
I forget exactly.
Yeah, she's got a pretty good story. Throne.
Okay. I started it on Switch and Steam Deck, and it's like I don't think I'm going back to it. My apologies. I know it's good.
I get it. Can I talk about something that's not an RPG though?
I don't know. Backstage pass. I guess so. Yeah.
Okay. I think everyone on this panel has played and loved this, but it came out early this year, and I don't want it to be forgotten because this should be in the top 3 this year.
Oh?
Hi-Fi Rush.
Yes,
Have
Kelsey.
you heard of Hi-Fi Rush?
Good Lord. I'm so glad. Because I love that game so much, I'm starting to second guess myself about like, am I out of my mind? I need to replay that because I could not be redder or hotter on Hi-Fi Rush. But it was so early that I do feel like I need to double check my love for it at a certain point because I'm completely with you, Kelsey.
I was so sure at the beginning of the year when I played this. I mean, I knew Zelda was coming out and all of that, but I was so sure this was going to be my game of the year.
Yeah.
It was, I just have not played anything that stylish and that fun, maybe ever, if not in a really long time. So in case people somehow missed our conversation about it, of which I don't think I ever was on the podcast talking about it.
Maybe not.
Yeah. But it's a rhythm action game that is super stylish, and you are the story doesn't matter. It's just really, really fun to beat people up to the beat.
But also the story does matter. Like the story's like better than it. I think one of my prevailing feelings about Hi-Fi Rush is like there are so many things that are better than it needs to be in that game. And like the story is one of them, where it's like people would not have cared if they like did not put as much effort into the story as they did, but they did. And there's like the like characters are like really well developed and stuff.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, when you're in sort of like the between levels thing in the little hideout, like I always talk to everybody as many times as they had dialogue for. So, I mean, I don't do that in games where the story is total trash. So
right.
Yeah, that's. I mean, if that doesn't end up in the top 3, and that is like in a year like this, I know that's going to be nearly impossible.
I feel like we kind of know what those other 2 spots are.
I know,
right?
I know. Kelsey, I think the Xenoblade Chronicles success has gone to your head. Now you're like top 3 or bust. It's trash if it's not top 3. Look,
I think it's that good and that unique of a game.
Yep.
In a year that has had a lot of really awesome hits and everything. One of the more unique experiences of the year.
Yeah.
And if you like, I don't think you need to finish that one to like really appreciate it and enjoy it.
Yeah.
You should, but like, I think if you put 6 hours into that game or less, you would still be like, okay, yeah, I see why everyone is crazy about this game.
Yeah.
Was there a point for you guys where it like skyrocketed you over the moon? Like,
yeah, when I hit start.
Are you on board right away?
Yeah, it was instantly.
Yeah, it was pretty instant. But I will say, I do think there's some great sequences towards the ending that really kind of lean into character stuff.
Much like a Space for the Unbound, it's like I don't want to come off as negative. I certainly liked what I played, but like I fell off, and I was like, yeah, that's a cool looking game. I don't know. I guess I need to go back to it and give it more time. But I played like 2 bosses. Like I didn't. It's not like I didn't
go back and dabble. Go back and dabble.
Yeah.
Although Jacob, I mean, you just played through the whole thing on your charity stream recently.
Yeah, my guess is that I've put more time into it than anyone else on this show. And I think it's great, but it is not. Again, it's closer to the 10 side of my top 10.
Yeah. Okay.
Just because I don't know. I think that upon many replays, it's like I love that combat system. It is not quite at the level of the games it is drawing from. Like it is not a Bayonetta or a Devil May Cry in terms of like its infinite replayability, but I do think the rhythm is like such a clever thing to kind of like help people understand the genre. So like I love it, and I will not be mad if it gets super high on our list, but if it
makes number 1, yeah.
I'm not coming out punching for it.
Okay, I'm
there
with you, Kelsey.
I need to play with headphones, I think.
Yes,
because like I played it with like the volume at a reasonable level, Like maybe that's what I'm missing. Like I need to let myself fully give into the music or something like that.
Yeah, and start snapping your fingers while you play.
I was tapping my foot.
It's fine. There's one game that I desperately want to get back to, and I'll speak on behalf of Leo Vader here. That like I hope more people play, which is Shadow Gambit: The Cursed Crew, which is the real-time stealth game is probably the best way to put it. I think it gets lumped into that idea of like tactics too easily, and everybody thinks
is real time the worst gaming moniker that we have?
It is odd.
Is Metal Gear Solid a real time stealth game?
A little bit. I guess the Shadow Gambit thing, I think I'm just sensitive to the way it's framed because I heard so many people talk about it on podcasts and how good it was, and they said it's like a tactics game, you know, it's kind of turn-based, kind of real-time, and I immediately checked out, like, okay, got it. But really, it's isometric Dishonored, and it freaking rules. It's so well done, and yeah, I know Leo is red hot on it. I know Jeffem got a code, but I don't know if Jeffem has started playing it yet, but I feel like that's one where I need to be locked in back-to-back with Leo to fight off all the, not haters, but just people who have not paid attention to the game because it's called Shadow Gambit: The Cursed Crew. But it's
I have to ask you if you had to write that down before you brought that up.
Maybe. There's a good Thanksgiving joke about it for anybody who watched our big Thanksgiving joke-a-thon. It's impossible to remember, but yes, Shadow Gambit: The Cursed Crew is quite good for anybody who's looking for a stealth-focused experience, but still just a ton of cool powers, and the pirate setting is fantastically well done.
Can I shout out a game that has a really easy name to remember?
Yeah.
Humanity.
Yeah. I was curious where you're going to end up with this thing.
I'm not sure how many. I mean, Ben, I know you played it.
Yeah.
Kelsey and Kyle, did you dabble? Did you beat it?
I played like the first. I forget exactly how it's wrapped up, but I probably played like 20 puzzles or so.
Yeah, I'm probably around that same ballpark. Right. I really think it's cool. It didn't light my heart on fire personally, I guess.
I downloaded it after hearing you guys talk about it, and then never actually. So it's on my list.
It's worth starting. It's definitely worth starting, Kelsey. Like it's a cool experience.
I think it's one of the most visually compelling games I've ever played. Like if we're just talking about, you know, in the same way that like Tetris Effect is or Rez, that it is just like their ability to just like put images on screen that make you kind of think about life are crazy. But also like that game does really. It changes a lot throughout the playthrough. Like each world has an almost entirely different set of like verbs that you're using. Whereas it starts where you're kind of laying down directions for the humans to follow like lemmings. But eventually you are like leading them around almost one-to-one with your little dog avatar thing. And also they start fighting, like war, combat becomes like a big part of the game, which is a little janky, but also like so interesting in terms of like what that game is kind of doing thematically. And I think there are a couple bosses, and they are both really towards the end, and they are also just so weird and like visually cool that it's just really worth. Literally, maybe even just like watch the last level of the game because it's just so like bizarre looking in this really awesome way.
Yeah, I think I saw it in the Game Informer documentary about the making of. They include it there, right? Or is it some other place?
It's actually they even show a clip of it in the trailer, like that like one of the final boss things. But yeah, it's just like, man, in terms of things that I have not seen before. Having like 100,000 people on screen is like pretty high up there.
That's awesome. Have you played in VR yet?
No, and I should.
You should for sure.
You don't have to. You're fine.
Come on, Kyle. Look alive, man.
I played it in VR. I was like, oh, I'm ready to get back to having a proper controller in my hand.
By the way,
it wasn't like terrible or anything. It wasn't like a worse way to play. It was just I have Talos Principle is the next one in my queue, so to speak. Now that I've finished Like a Dragon, and it's not that like it has to be like what puzzle game makes it, but I'm curious if like if I
What
like
puzzle
that
game that's
more.
also about like the philosophy of being a human?
Right? Yeah. If I had a nickel, but
I started Talos Principle. It made me nauseated immediately, but I think it's really well done. I know Leo was not as hot on it as he wanted, and Janet's just kind of getting into it now. But do you have a prediction for where you're going to be at for Talos Principle 2, Kyle?
No, I didn't even play the first one, so I can't even. I think I might like it because it hews closer to the kind of puzzles I like.
Yeah.
Which is like, I mean, Portal is maybe shorthand, but even I could expand it out further and be like, I like being trapped in an area and being a singular
yes, I'm totally
character that has to get out of that area. Like that's like a style of puzzle that I like.
I'm with you. Where like I like the containment of a test chamber. I love the idea of like the puzzles in this room. Like there's not going to be that feeling of like, am I missing something? You have to go back to that hallway and get that other item. It's like, no. What you're looking at, there is a way to solve this right now. I guess that's why I kind of like shrines, in Zelda and stuff too. Is everybody going to go back and revisit Zelda a little bit? Or do we feel like we got that out of our system? Like, Kelsey, did you roll credits on Zelda?
No, I still haven't.
Oh my God. All right. I hope everyone with the deepest dive that didn't finish it, they go back right before the Game of the Year debates. It seems like that's a good way to kind of get the boost going into the discussion.
I don't think it would take me more than like 90 minutes.
I really think it would
finish it at this point.
Right
I'm right up there.
Yep, for sure. Let's see. Shout out to the Making of Karateka. I feel like that's going to be Kelsey and I fighting tooth and nail for a while for that one. But
yeah, for sure. And again, another one of those games where like just go experience it for like a couple hours in the same way you would experience a documentary or something. And it is so much more than just the like history that is presented to you. It's done in such the way they introduce gameplay elements and stuff to it and teach you through playing it's really brilliant.
Yeah.
Like it's just a really, really cool way to learn about a game. And I guarantee you, as someone who did not grow up, playing original Prince of Persia or Karateka or anything like that. Sorry, Karateka.
Karateka. Please.
I'm going to do that for the rest of my life. But it didn't matter. Like, it didn't matter that I have zero nostalgia for this game. I really appreciated it very quickly.
I know. I was on the Fire Escape podcast with Dan Reichert not too long ago, and it was the most frustrating thing in the world because I was talking about how cool the game was. He's like, well, I don't want to play it because I don't know anything about Karateka. I'm like, that's the point, is you learn about Karateka by playing the game and why it matters. Let's see. Rapid fire stuff. We got Theatrhythm Final Bar Line. I love
this year.
That was this year. I love that Final Fantasy rhythm game so much. I am quaking in my boots looking at how many other games came out this year and thinking about its chances of getting on the 210s. But I don't want to go down without a fight for that awesome rhythm game. Anybody else got one that
I really liked PARANORMASIGHT. It was a like weird horror visual novel that I don't think very many people played. But I really enjoy. Again, no chance this year, but a very good experience that I recommend.
How long is that?
I don't think it's less than 10 hours, but I can't remember by how much. Let's ask how long to beat.
Wow, the pitch for this game, at least that the Square Enix site is giving, is very funny.
Oh no, it's like almost 12 hours. I guess it felt like a little less to me, but
the story of a crushing command and its mysterious origins. A giant bloody foot smashes through Mikazacho residence ceiling commanding Wash.
What? All right, PARANORMASIGHT.
That's one of the 7 mysteries.
Of Honjo. I've heard of that.
Honjo.
That's the full name of the game. Anybody else got rapid fire stuff?
I want to shout out Pikmin 4.
Yeah.
Not because I don't think anyone believes it's good, but I think it was underplayed, like every Pikmin game is. But I that game like surprised me in a weird way, and like I've always been kind of a middling Pikmin fan, but I was like, this is the best one. This is great. Ochi is my hero, and I love him, and he makes the game so much better in every way.
I'm worried about that one a little bit too, Kyle. Where it's like I also really enjoyed it. I don't know if I'm going to push for it that hard, but it rules. Like, it's a great game. There's no doubt. But it's But again, it's almost unfair to Pikmin 4 because I feel like I'm just rebounding against the amount of love that I hear other people give it. Where I'm like, yeah, it's great. It's a Pikmin game. It's just a really great Pikmin game. But there's a certain cap on a Pikmin game. With all due respect to Olimar, with all due respect.
I don't think this was underplayed in the general community, but in the MinnMax group of people I'm going to be arguing against, Armored Core 6 is really, really good.
Yeah,
and I think,
one.
I don't think the barrier to entry is that high. You don't have to beat it, but I think you could play the first 5-6 levels, not hit a hard stopping point, and appreciate how cool it is.
Yeah, I should go back to Armored Core 6 because are you the only person? I think Janet might have dabbled, but
I played through the first boss, the first big boss.
All right, there we go.
I watched my partner play through almost the whole game.
Kyle Hilliard style. We're familiar with that strategy.
Hey, yeah, the like a dragon, Yakuza like a dragon approach.
What else we got? Rapid fire recommendations here.
Let's not forget the Dead Space remake. I really enjoyed that.
That's an interesting one. That's an interesting one. Yep, great.
I
no
like
doubt.
Wolong Fallen Dynasty a lot this year, but I think Lies of P is just sort of took it out of the back and shot it.
Yep. I think that might be true. Shout out. Oh, go ahead.
Venba, 90 minutes. That's if you want to just add another game to your list that is good. That one does not take much commitment.
I can't believe that they actually called it that. Venba : 90 minutes. It's a brilliant marketing strategy, I think.
That actually wouldn't be a bad name for
it. It really
game.
wouldn't.
This game's only 2 hours.
Well, they named one 12 minutes, but that one didn't go over that one.
Good point.
Shout out to Affinity on Apple Arcade. The game that's a little bit like a 2048 or a 3's, but I think it's my favorite mobile game of the year, but I guess that's kind of condescending to even put it that way. Also, shout out to, there's something called Double Fine Psych Odyssey that I hope a lot of people watch before maybe we talk about a certain category.
How long does that one take to beat, Ben?
How long to beat? It's up there. It's up there. I did it in a weekend, so everyone can do it in a weekend. It's just 32 episodes of the greatest video game documentary known to man. Okay, anything we missed?
Yes, plenty.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Plenty.
I know it became a joke on last week's podcast a little bit, but Bayonetta Origins is actually pretty good.
Yeah, I know.
Pretty decent game.
Yeah, I played 2 or 3 hours.
Also, shout out to a game that everybody forgot came out this year and totally flopped, but I thought was pretty interesting, was Wild Hearts. It was a kind of interesting take on the Monster Hunter format, and I think they've already shut down the servers. It is... it's a game that definitely would multiplayer is a better way to do that. So I think it's, kind of a total flop, but I appreciated that it happened.
I'm looking forward to you putting it on the list and we can give it its due on the 210s because it is sad that
it's honorable mention probably. Honestly, but
it'll be on the big list even if it doesn't crack into the 210s. But yeah, I felt bad that that didn't work out better because it seemed quite good for everybody who put a lot of time into it. Let's see. Shout out to games like Ghost Trick that I told myself I was absolutely going to play the remake of this year. Did not happen. I feel terrible about it. Star Wars Jedi Survivor. I'm bracing you for impact. Rest in peace early. I don't think that's making the 210s because that was a weird one where a lot of people love it, but just everybody on our crew is just kind of like,
that's unfortunately that's one that I will be coming out against.
Wow, you don't even need to. You dark Lord of the Sith. Also, shout out on behalf of other people, Fashion Dreamer. I think Janet and Sarah are going to be all about it. And then I've heard whisperings of how hot Leo is on Hitman Freelancer, and I'm quaking in my boots thinking about how finding a slot for that one that appeases Leo and Haley, to be fair. So a lot of fun stuff. We're going to be recording the Game of the Year debates. Technically, we're going to be starting recording it on December 16th, and then we're going to be trickling it all out. So just so y'all know, you will not be missing an episode of the MinnMax Show throughout the holiday break. We'll be hitting every single week still for your pleasure. And if you're at the Backstage Pass tier, you can watch all of those debates live. Like normally Backstage Pass, it's like, oh, it's cool to watch it live a day early. In this case, you can watch us do the entire 210s debate weeks early. 2 weeks early compared to everybody else, as long as you don't spoil it for everybody else. So if you join us at the $10 tier, you can get super duper early access. So we appreciate everybody for doing that. Jacob, do you know how this whole thing operates?
I do, but I want you to tell me.
I'll tell you. It's a little thing that we personally like to call Patreon. Patreon.com/MinnMax with 2 N's. If you've enjoyed our content this year, if you've enjoyed this sprint of content we've been doing recently, if you're looking forward to the Game of the Year debates, please help support this stuff directly by going to patreon.com/MinnMax with 2 N's. And special shout out to some of our biggest supporters. Truly a huge thank you. We only choose supporters who... not like patron supporters, but I guess sponsors who we genuinely enjoy. Like, it's very nice to be able to pick and choose. So I'm delighted to have these folks on board. Shout out to people like HelloFresh. They're not people, you can eat them. With HelloFresh, you get farm fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorstep. Skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. Kyle, that's why it's America's #1 meal kit. You keep saying, what, maybe number 2, number 3, if it's lucky. I don't know if HelloFresh is going to make the 2 10s.
We're always like we ranking the same way we rank games at the end of the year. We're always talking about this.
I say no, it's America's #1 meal kit. Recently, again, I'm delighted every time we're stressed out about food and then there's just a big box on the door and it's like, oh, HelloFresh order. Okay, we don't need to worry about dinner for a while. This is great. Opened up the big batch recently. They included a bunch of breakfast stuff in there. So they have little one-off breakfast things you can heat up. Otherwise, it was also filled with a bunch of muffins. It's like, are you kidding me? Just muffins to your doorstep? What is this? The future? And then also they sent recipes for, you gotta choose which one you want, Kelsey, and I'll make it for you and ship it out to Seattle. Sweet chili pork and cabbage stir fry, pecan crusted chicken, or Gouda Vibes burger.
Ooh. I think what was the pork chili something?
Sweet chili pork and cabbage stir fry.
I love a sweet chili.
Okay, all right.
I think a sweet chili is wins out for me.
Well, then I'm gonna make it. It's gonna be a piece of cake to make because of HelloFresh, and then I will send it right out to Seattle. So go to hellofresh.com/MinnMaxFree and use code MinnMaxFree for free breakfast for life. As long as you're a subscriber to HelloFresh is the way that works. 1 breakfast item per box while subscription is active. That's free breakfast for life at hellofresh.com/MinnMaxFree with code MinnMaxFree. Make cooking at home easy, fun, and affordable with HelloFresh. Please, there's links below for all this stuff. Also, shout out to Uncommon Goods. They want you to know that, hey, it's officially time to kickstart your holiday shopping, they want you to know. But there's no cause for panic. Uncommon Goods is here to make your holiday shopping stress-free by scouring the globe for the most remarkable and truly unique gifts for everyone on your list. Check out Uncommon Goods. We talked about it before, Kelsey, but just going to that store, truly, if you need to get a gift for anybody's holiday season, you will be able to find something that is cool and funky and good. Like they have 12 days of hot sauce calendar. If I open that on a Christmas morning, I'd be giddy. I'd say, well, this is a fun adventure that will last for at least 12 days, which is more than you can extend to any other holiday season. When you shop at Uncommon Goods, you're supporting artists and small independent businesses. These fine products are often made in small batches, so shop now at Uncommon Goods before they sell out this holiday season. Uncommon Goods looks for products that are high quality, unique, and often handmade in the US. They have the most meaningful, out of the ordinary gifts anywhere, so check it out. You can get 15% off your next gift. Go to uncommongoods.com/MinnMax. That's uncommongoods.com/MinnMax for 15% off. Don't miss out on this limited time offer. Uncommon Goods, they're out of the ordinary. Also, shout out to First Leaf. Kyle, you know when you go to a liquor store and you have to pick out a bottle of wine and then you say, looking at a bunch of options in the aisle?
That's the noise I make. You nailed it.
Well, the only noise you should be making is typing on your keyboard as you go to tryfirstleaf.com/MinnMax, because First Leaf is a wine subscription service where it's a very cool thing. You go there and then you fill out a whole simple, cute, perfectly presented questionnaire about what type of wine do you like? What type of notes and flavors do you like in your wine? How much red, how much white do you prefer here? You fill it all out and then they ship 6 bottles to your house. Surprisingly affordable. And it'll just go right to your house. And last time Sarah and Anna came by for Cream of the Steam, I was able to hand them 2 bottles of wine and say, hey, this is from First Leaf. and they said, "Thank you, First Leaf," in unison. It was really uncanny. So First Leaf is the wine club that sends me a personalized shipment of bottles that are based on my unique palate right to my door. All you have to do is go to First Leaf's website, answer a few questions, and you're good to go. Plus, all First Leaf wine is priced 30% lower than what you'd pay at a wine store. And every selection is backed by First Leaf's 100% satisfaction guarantee. I drank it and I felt good and it was tasty, so mission accomplished. Find the wine you'll love this holiday season with First Leaf. Go to tryfirstleaf.com/minmax to sign up and you'll get your first 6 hand-curated bottles for just $44.95. 6 bottles of wine for $44.95. That's tryfirstleaf.com/minmax, tryfirstleaf.com/minmax. And thank you to the grandpappy of all sponsors. We're talking about I Am 8-Bit. They want you to know about Day of the Devs, which is happening in LA in person December 8th from 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. Pacific. If you want to go to an event, play a bunch of indie games that aren't out yet, meet the developers, see Tim Schafer running around, see Janet Garcia running around, it is a free event in LA happening on December 8th. All you need to do is please RSVP on Eventbrite. There is a link in the description below for dayofthedevs.com where that Eventbrite link will exist, but it's a free event. Go there, help support I Am 8-Bit, support Day of the Devs, because it's always a beautiful presentation. They've been going since 2012 with Day of the Devs, and this in-person event is happening December 8th, but they also have a digital event that's going to be happening that you can watch on the internet, and that is happening on December 6th for that digital showcase. And help support I Am 8-Bit by checking out Day of the Devs, or just by checking out their wonderful online store. IAM8bit.com, everybody. They have a ton of great gifts for the gamers in your life and beyond. Truly one of the coolest companies around. I'm so happy that they're associated with us. So check out IAM8bit.com and you can use the promo code GOBBLETILLYOUWOBBLE for 10% off everything under $100. And please help support I Am 8-Bit because they're supporting MinnMax in a big way by shipping out a prize to a member of the MinnMax community. If you support us on Patreon at any tier, even that $2 tier, you're making the show better by funding it. You're making the show better by submitting comments and questions that we read on the show, and then we choose our absolute number one favorite, and they win the prize from I Am 8-Bit. In this case, it is the Artful Escape vinyl soundtrack that you shall be winning. So look alive. We need to remember our favorite community question, and then that person wins the Artful Escape from I Am 8-Bit. Kelsey, you want to start answering community questions before you have to bow out?
Sure.
All right.
I didn't look at them at all, so I have no idea what you're going to ask me, but...
Well, get ready for this then. Let's see. Mike Lynch writes in, and they say, have you had a surprising moment in your career? An opportunity, chance encounter, etc., that you never planned for, but it became a positive thing for you? Interesting question. The surprising moment in your career, other than like, I guess in theory, pulling off the career that we're all happy with at this point in our lives. That's the most surprising thing, I guess, is it all kind of worked out.
I will remember, I think it was in my first week or two, speaking of Karateka, at Game Informer, I remember our coworker Matt Cotto came up to us and he's like, hey, we have a chance to interview Jordan Mechner. Do you know who that is? Like, he wasn't sure that if I knew who it was. Yeah. And I remember just being like, yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely. Like, I want to talk to Jordan Mechner. And he was like almost surprised that I knew who he was.
Just because you're a big Prince of Persia fan, like you knew that name pretty well?
Yeah, because of Prince of Persia. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I love Sands of Time so much. It wasn't even, it was Sands of Times specifically. But that always sticks out to me as a moment of like, oh my gosh, that job is talking to people like Jordan Mechner, who, like, you know, your coworkers are kind of like, do we have time to talk to him? I was like, I hope we have time to talk to him.
Yeah. Oh, that was such a fun period, is like first getting into Game Informer and having those moments that are just like mind-blowing. Like, it's weird timeline-wise, but we did a cover for the Tomb Raider reboot back in 2010, even though it didn't come out until 2013. And that was like just a giddy thrill. It was like first day at Game Informer, like Megan Marie pulled me aside and she's like, hey, I need your help editing a video for our upcoming cover story, and don't tell anybody, it's top secret, but like they're rebooting Tomb Raider and it's a huge, cool like survival game now. I was like, oh my God, that's so cool. And I just started clapping uproariously, and I didn't even get a chance to help her because I wouldn't stop clapping. But.
And then you played it 3 years later and were like, yes, it was worth the win.
That was a really cool game. People should remember how cool that game was. Yeah.
I feel like mine are all like, oh gosh, there's a person who I did not think would watch my videos who
Yeah.
did, which feels a little, it's like, it's not quite as exciting, I guess, but like there was a thing early on where one of the primary writers of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, like not only said she like watched my videos, but was like, I want like my writing class to watch this.
Whoa.
And I was like, I'm a huge Buffy fan, and so it was like, it was really, is Marty Noxon for people who know, but it was just like, my gosh, why would she ever have encountered my videos? And it was like, I think her son watched them and liked them. And there's another the writer of Chain Gang All-Stars, which is a book that came out this year that's very popular. Like, I talked about one of his short stories in a video once, and then like he reached out and got in touch. And so it's like, that level of, I think I'm always putting people like I'm like, they're so much kind of cooler than me. Why would they ever watch a YouTube video about video games? And then it turns out, like, actually most people watch YouTube videos about video games.
Yeah, most people watch YouTube, and at this point, YouTube's pumping your videos to every phone on Earth. So the odds
That's
that you
true.
I mean, just think of the number of wild celebrities, and I know you're always chasing celebrities. They'll like watch your videos, but just like don't interact. Like, you have no idea, but I bet Barack Obama's watched at least 3 of your videos at this point. There's no doubt about it.
I do.
Werner Herzog, huge fan.
A friend of mine said that like a long time ago, before he, it was obvious that he was completely nuts. Like Elon Musk apparently was a big fan of his videos, but apparently Elon Musk DM'd him a long time ago and was like, "I love your videos, dude." And then, that maybe used to be a badge of honor, not.
It's
They
deteriorating.
should reopen that thread and be like, "Hey, why don't you
That's what I
tell
keep saying.
Twitter to someone else?" At this
No,
point?
it's like, could I have changed things? Could I, if I knew now?
Honestly, if anybody wants to start gambling on this, now's the time. Would anybody gamble that Elon Musk has not seen a second of a Jacob Geller video? I would absolutely bet that he has. I would absolutely.
probably have.
I'd bet hundreds, thousands of dollars on that. Absolutely.
And how do you feel about that, Jake?
It was this.
You're a monster,
Someone was
Jacob.
like, "Hey, Elon, I don't think this rocket material is actually what we want for the launch." And he's like, "Shut up! I'm watching a video on horror games."
What a focused individual. Beefcake writes in, they say, do you think that considering so many people are getting laid off from these big game companies, it'll lead to a big indie boom in the next few years? Also, I'll take my answer on the air. Oh, that's nice. That's an interesting question. What do y'all think?
I feel like we live in an indie boom.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know what an indie boom separate from this looks like.
We already have a lot of like companies being founded by people who either left or were laid off of studios, and we have an enormous amount of extremely good indie games right now.
I think the kind of the dividing line that maybe is missing from this question is like, it's marketing, like that's kind of the, it's like, it's not like there are not enough indie games, and there are actually thousands of more indie games than anyone even knows about that came out this year. And it's like the dividing line is just how much money do you have to spend on getting them out there? And so like, it's possible that these well-established, industry people, if they're starting their own studios, will also have a better working knowledge of like PR than kind of indie devs who have never been in a big studio. But like, I don't think there will be more games. I just think it's possible that maybe, it's like the marketing changes or whatever, it's like, is it going to be a similar thing to games journalism where suddenly you have like all of these kind of random small outlets that are technically independent, but are like filled with people who used to be in the industry and so kind of know more about it than people who started out independent? I don't know. Yeah,
I think the indie boom, I think that's a weird way to phrase it, but just that idea of like, oh, we're going to get new cool indie teams formed because of this. Yes, I think more so from studio closures. It's always like the weird supernova effect of like when a studio goes down, I always think of like Irrational, right? Like how many little studios popped up because of that. And so I think of places like Volition, which was shut down this year. I'm trying to think of the other big studios that were shut down this year fully. But I think there will be new studios because of that might make some smaller, quote unquote, indie games. But like the layoffs, I don't know if that's necessarily the same thing. You know, I don't know if it's like last one in, first one out, yada, yada, yada. So like, I think it's a lot of like lower people on the production line, or maybe they don't have as much experience. And so I don't know if a lot of people who were laid off this year could then parlay that into like, now I get funding for my indie studio. But I'm sure there's a lot of really talented people, obviously, that were laid off. And so maybe they could do it. It's just not a matter of like, there were a lot of layoffs this year, but it wasn't the level of name that could easily get funding for an independent studio, I guess is my point, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
I also just assume we're in like an endless cycle of like new small studio starts with some people who know what they're doing, then they get acquired, then it gets shut down, then the cycle begins anew kind of thing. Like it already feels like we're at least a couple turns into that cycle now.
Yeah,
sure.
That's the circle of life.
It's like, we'll probably talk about this in biggest news, but it's like, I don't think we should underestimate the amount of people who will be leaving the industry. Yeah. Like I don't think this means more games. You know, like I think that ultimately what this year, the best year ever for games, like what this is going to mean in the future is like there are fewer people working in games, and especially like people who are established and know what they're doing are going to decide to get the hell out because it's such a bad industry to work in.
I mean, I definitely have seen a number of people write in, even like to Party Chatter bonus podcast, with that idea of like, I'm on the verge of getting into the game industry and I don't know if I want to do it anymore, which is, you know, scary for the overall industry here.
Yeah.
Slycut writes in, they say, hey everybody, when going over the Game Awards nominations, y'all said you didn't know what Synapse was. Ben, being a big Metal Gear fan, I thought you might have heard of this thing. It's the PSVR 2 exclusive. I completely forgot about this. Because the two main characters are voiced by David Hayter and Jennifer Hale. Synapse is easily the best VR game I've ever played. Being able to change the target of your telekinesis just with your eyes is such a game changer. Everything's so fluid, the progression is great. Synapse is not one to miss. As a side note, I recently finished Sea of Stars and noticed that Tim Turry's in the credits. Thanks to our partners at Sony PlayStation, like Tim Turry. Look at that. I'll be damned. Friend of the show.
It is a fun game to play when you finish a Sony game. You're like, where's Tim?
Yeah, where's that Tim Turry guy? We used to work with him at Game Informer, if you're not familiar with Tim Turry. Yeah, I feel bad. Sorry for missing out on Synapse. I'll have to check it out here.
Yeah, sorry for having your PSVR 2, Ben.
Oh, yeah, you do. Well, you're just going to keep it until Resident Evil 4 VR comes out, and then you'll ship it back.
That's the one game I'll play on it, and then I'll send it back.
I gave the Game Informers to Blake Hester, and then he moved to New York. So I don't have it either.
There's no way that survived
Maybe
the move.
he'll play it, though.
That's a mess. I played Assassin's Creed Nexus VR.
I started
this weekend.
Yeah.
Did you? Yeah, Kyle, what do you think?
Yeah. Well, I had a lot of technical problems to the point where I'm almost hesitant to talk about it too much because I think I need to like recalibrate everything or maybe even reinstall it. Like I like couldn't climb. Like it like wasn't working. Like Ezio was not grabbing onto like grab points.
Well, this is early Ezio, so he doesn't quite know how to climb yet, you know, so maybe he was just struggling away.
He just falls up like an 8-foot wall. But one quick, the wrist blade motion, that felt pretty good in VR.
Yeah, Jacob, you get to go like, and then the little wrist blade pops out and you have a sword and stuff. And so you get to stab people. If you've always wanted to do that in VR and you've wanted to look down and see yourself as Ezio, I guess Assassin's Creed Nexus VR is good for you. But yeah, it's funky because you're like, I hadn't really played a big stealth game in VR, so even having that idea of like, all right,
I have either. Yeah.
So like sneaking around boxes and like crouching and actually trying to dodge guards' line of sight as you're looking around a room in VR is a different kind of feeling. But I was able to climb in the game, Kyle, and it just kind of made me sick immediately because you're like pulling yourself up and the entire world is changing. And it's cool they have that in there, but it's nauseating.
Yeah, I will say I don't, because that was Horizon's whole thing.
Yeah.
Like I don't love that action of like climbing in VR. So maybe Assassin's Creed not for me, but like walking up behind someone and hitting them with a wrist blade felt pretty good in VR.
It does feel pretty good. Yeah. It's cool too. They have an option in the menu for fear of heights, where if you turn it on, it makes like a mesh below you at all times. So you don't feel like you're climbing a building and you should be terrified, but it's weird just to have a layer of protection there. But I was struck that Meta exclusive. I thought for sure like, oh, Assassin's Creed Nexus VR, that's got to be on PSVR too, but no. So it's telling that like one of the big, third-party VR games is not landing on Sony's headset this year, which is
that is surprising.
Sad state of
I
affairs.
don't think I realized that. I
played NFL Pro Era in VR, and it made me thankful for VR existing. Not that it's a great experience, but just like I like VR more and more. Again, not for playing the games, but just like I just like knowing that there's this pocket of really weird, bold game development happening in VR. You know, there's still people trying a ton of different things, and like, you know, we don't talk about it, but somewhere there's a game called NFL Pro Era that's releasing where you actually have to run around and you have like a pretend football mask on. You like try and throw Hail Marys to the end zone. Like that's a cool thing to do physically, and it kind of bums me out that we're all just like, yeah, I mean, there's no future for it, and I feel like it's just kind of the cool ideas and developers giving it their all are drying up slowly more and more in VR, and it's kind of a bummer, you know?
Well, it's like, I mean, I feel strongly about like Playdate's ability to create interesting experiences and stuff, but like that's stuff that can be done by one person. And creating an interesting VR experience, like I feel just as strongly about both of those things, like being interesting but not necessarily having a future.
I feel a guest coming on. Do you all feel that tingle in your stomachs? Danny O'Dwyer from NoClip.
Hi.
Hello. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely, definitely didn't just wake up 2 minutes ago. I'm feeling fresh as a daisy.
Yeah, we never know when people are going to join us on the podcast. Sometimes it's the middle of coming to questions. Sometimes you just have no sense of it.
I like how Ben promised to make it seamless, and you immediately pulled the rug out from yourself.
Full
and, like,
seam.
Gotta look. My whole work life is showing how sausage is made. I can't not point at the sausage.
That's right. It's truth, baby. Let's see, Danny, you're on with Kyle Hilliard, down with Jacob Geller and Kelsey Lewin.
Great to see you all. Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, right too.
Yeah.
Look, you're speaking like a real American, Danny. Congratulations.
I know. It's been 10 years now. So, you know, I still don't know how to use an alarm clock, but I know how to say Happy Thanksgiving. So.
Didn't you?
That's a very American pastime, alarm clock.
Didn't you go to
something unique to this country?
Apple pie.
Didn't you go to the Reichert's family Thanksgiving in Kansas at some point?
I did. You know what's really funny is that we shot. Do you remember I shot a video in his backyard? Do you remember this?
No, I don't remember.
Around that time. So he for whatever reason he decided to do the whole like drink 7-Up and eat like 2 bananas thing.
This is Dan Reichert, you're saying?
Yeah.
Doesn't sound
have
like
you guys
him.
ever done this?
No, but the idea is you have to puke or something, yada yada yada.
Oh, 100. Yeah, like you can, like I had this I was big timing him saying I haven't like projectile vomited in like 15, 20 years, and he was like, oh well when we go to Kansas I gotta, and we
Did
sat in his
Dan
backyard.
clap into the podcast? Just amazing, yeah.
I think his mom recorded it. So and we just did this whole thing, and like there was a video online of the two of us at Thanksgiving in Kansas, getting sick in his backyard. And then years later, I went to find it. And whenever he like applied for a job at WWE, he like cleaned some stuff off of his YouTube channel. And I couldn't believe it. But he did. He got rid of it. He was like, that was too much. That was a step too far for Vince McMahon, probably.
Yeah, that's the difference between you, Dan. Is Dan Reichert, he's scared of the truth. You're embracing it. Your entire career is about surfacing truth, man.
That's exactly that, and selling out with a new video production company.
Yeah, Jesus. All right, so there's a lot to unpack here. So you announced Secret Tape, which is a for-hire video production company that's made up of the same crew as NoClip, which was the independent-funded game documentary Patreon.
Yes, accurate.
Okay.
The long and short of it was during COVID, like we had a bunch of people like Jeremy who films all our stuff, Frank who does a bunch of work, we have loads of contractors and stuff. And during COVID, we kind of all just agreed to like take care of each other a little bit, just like because there was a lot of like hazard pay for video production people, like a lot of internal video teams during COVID weren't like obviously filming stuff, so they were hiring a lot of freelancers to do like work that was like, especially during COVID, a little bit dangerous.
Yeah.
And some of our folks are like immunocompromised and stuff. So we just sort of all agreed like, all right, let's try and make it work as like a proper, because for the most part, everyone who works with us is like freelancers who have other jobs and stuff like that. And so during COVID, we started like working really well together and like doing sharing edits with Jeremy, like just working way more collaboratively than we were previously, where I was doing most of the post-production and the guys were kind of just giving me stuff and then I was doing it all.
Yeah.
And then we sort of came out of that end of it and I was like, well, okay, we have this like really good team that works well together. We've been saying no to commercial jobs for years because we don't want NoClip to have paid work on it or anything like that, because it'll just tear apart our whole mission and the integrity of the whole project. Is there a way to parlay this thing into like, so everyone on the team can continue to have that sort of safety, and also that like maybe it can fund projects that are interesting, that are kind of outside the reach of NoClip? And honestly, it was about a year of discovery. We said no to 80% of the stuff that got thrown our way, and then there was a couple of projects that we were like, okay, this seems interesting. Okay. And then the big one was obviously the Valve thing, which was like pretty hard to say no to.
Yeah, we were talking about it earlier in the show. I mean, this is your third documentary at least that you've made about Half-Life 1.
Yeah, I'm a Half-Life sicko, big fan.
So how does this happen? Because you must have been frustrated in the past that you couldn't even get a response from Valve for being included in previous documentaries, and now they're coming to your door and begging you for a Half-Life documentary? What the hell's going on?
Well, I'm sure like everyone here has like that one company that they want to work with, and probably also have had the experience of like there are some companies just don't answer calls, right? Yeah. And like it's not just me, like Valve are a company that don't have like this sort of, now they sort of have a dedicated PR person or marketing person, but like they're so, I don't know, hard to pin down. They don't have that type of infrastructure. And then there's other crowds like Rockstar, for instance, who like, I know their PR people really well, but they just don't do that much with certain people, right? They're super controlling. And like, that's just kind of, the way the wind blows, and sure. But we made I'm a big fan of Half-Life, and we made that 20th anniversary one that from a position of the same thing that like all these other, there's a decent community of like Half-Life / Valve fans that exist on YouTube and Twitch and stuff. I think a bunch of us decided independently that we wanted to do something, on Black Mesa, there's so much like passion for the games. So on the 20th anniversary, I decided to do something, reached out, didn't hear back, sort of didn't expect to hear back. And it was a different time, I think. Like, this is pre-Alex. Like, the end of the documentary ends and saying like, and we'll never play another Half-Life game again. And then Alex gets announced and everything, right? And it's awesome. Like, it's incredible. So, so I think it wasn't a direct response to that. I just think that like Valve is a company that I've experienced now, at least, that really just authentically does stuff or authentically doesn't. And it seems like over there at the moment, they have, I don't know, a bit more passion to do that type of thing. And like all the anniversary stuff that they did was prior to them ever contacting me. And that's the real meat. Like, that's the work that they were doing was, they made like 4 new multiplayer maps and like patched a 25-year-old game, like it's wild. I mean, it's kind of summed up. I saw the top comment on the documentary, which is available on Valve's YouTube channel. And the top comment is, Valve acknowledging their past is crazy to see. And it's like, Kelsey, that must be shocking to you to see a company like this suddenly embrace their history.
Yeah, I mean, it gives me hope for other famously insular companies becoming a little bit more open to
Nintendo.
But I was really impressed with just the the candidness of it, and the really demystifying, I think, a lot of the things that people get excited about when they learn about like cut content or, like art that never made it into the game and that sort of thing. I think is often framed as like a great tragedy that something, didn't make it, and like it was some jerk who wanted to cut it or whatever. And so I think just the way that it's presented in a like, hey, this was a really cool enemy, but like these are the exact reasons it got cut and the game is better for it, I think is a really, I always really appreciate when that kind of stuff is, more transparent. So, and also I enjoyed all the Seattle stuff in there. That was, of course, you gotta have that. I don't know why I wasn't expecting that, but I was like, oh my God, they're talking about the Kirkland Costco and like, all these random places in Seattle.
Yeah, there was a lot more Seattle in it, I think, at one stage. I had a lot more, talking about where they were in Kirkland and where they are now in Bellevue and that type of thing. But there was a brutal last week to just try and get the thing pared down to any sort of length. But yeah, it's funny. It's funny how like the physicality of a place or where I've always loved that. Maybe it's because I'm Irish person, transplant, all that. I've always liked how it's not every studio, but a lot of studios, the local culture and where they're from is actually such an integral part of how they operate, or maybe the art they make, the games they make. So
yeah, I love that. That's exactly my cup of tea too. Is like visiting so many studios when I was at Game Informer. It's like, oh, you can feel the local flavor. Like, okay, I know that BioWare included this name because in Edmonton there's a store that's named that recently, or like right next to their studio. I think like Samara.
Funny.
Yeah, I think what it is specifically what I'm referencing is so BioWare used to be in a hotel. It was connected to a hotel. There was just like a lobby, and then BioWare was over here. And in the hotel area, there's a big sign that says Tamara's Gifts. And it's like a gift store. And it's like, there's no way that wasn't an influence on the name of Samara from Mass Effect. Like, it has to be a direct reference. But I'm curious about the archives at Valve. Yeah, there's so much cool art of like unused assets, unused enemies, stuff like that. I mean, all those old photos. What is that process like? Are they just opening up the doors and saying, dig through all this stuff? Do they have just a hard drive of all these old assets, or how does that work?
I would, Kelsey's not going to like this. I would put Half-Life or Valve in the same bucket as a lot of studios I go to, where there are people there who wish they had done a better job of archiving, and there's really not that much of an archive there. Like and I think that's like a lot of studios, and you can kind of get a sense of the ones that have, because they tend to use it. Like Crystal Dynamics, we did a documentary with them last year, I think it was, and they had a fantastic setup. And I know the Video Game History Foundation actually has a bunch of CD stuff because of the amount of times that they upscaled and downsized, right? I think Frank has a bunch of that. But they also do as well. And they had it like well preserved. They had it in like a temperature controlled room. They had like videotapes and bunches of photographs and bunches of hard drives and, marketing materials and loads of bits and bobs. It was a real treat to go there. All the boxes, they had a box of every game they ever made, and we filmed all this stuff, and they gave us great access to it. Valve doesn't have that type of thing. There was some individual people on the team who were basically able to help us out with some stuff. Chuck Jones has an ArtStation page where he publishes a bunch of those images, and he basically gave us loads of that stuff, including stuff that he hadn't released. There's a bunch of stuff in there, like the G-Man, the original G-Man drawing, and a bunch of other ones. That was all that stuff. And then, other people had photographs. Like a lot of the photographs were from that. And then I'd say the one thing, and obviously I can't just be like, this is every single thing that happened during this documentary, but like in regards to all of the stuff that you saw, they also had modern materials. Like when they made Raising the Bar, the Half-Life 2 book, they obviously had at that stage scanned a bunch of really high-res stuff, so we were able to, they gave us the like print files for that, so that was handy. And I got the coolest thing I got maybe was like the original key art for the Half-Life 1 box. Like that was
that's
like
good.
The high-res version of that. We actually had them. I printed out. It was like super last minute, and we've got like whoever it was, like some print company or like a UPS store or something. We had 3 huge posters printed out of the key art, and we had all the team sign all 3 of them. And I didn't know. I was just like, I guess let's get them to sign something, because like the chances are this is the only time this is ever going to happen.
Yeah.
So we got almost everyone. Obviously, we didn't get Gabe because that was a remote interview, and there was like 3 people we couldn't get for the doc. But otherwise, we got the whole team. So we just have those, and I'm like, I would either do a charity auction or give them to fans or something like that. But that was the last. I was like, when you get print files that are that high res, you need to print them. It's like the universe is forcing you to do it.
How bonkers was this for you? Was this the most exciting project you ever worked on?
Oh yeah.
Oh, really?
By a mile. Yeah.
By a mile.
Any one of you imagine like your the thing you love doing professionally the most, and then your absolute like favorite game. Like that was it. And it was a real, like, I tried to enjoy it. I think if I had done this in like my 20s, I would have like crunched on it and worked on it furiously and like not really enjoyed the process. But I really tried to, like, I was like, this is, if, number one, I was terrified this might not happen the entire time because it's Valve, right? So they can just, if it's not up to snuff, if it's not good enough, they can just go, oh, well, we tried. And then it never goes out. And then, I live in creative purgatory the rest of my life. But then I was thinking like, oh, if I complete this thing and like just work my ass off on and don't enjoy the process of it, what was the point? So I tried to like enjoy it as much as I could. Like we had a really good vibe going for the interviews. We spread them out a little bit, so everyone was like, the team and myself and the interviewees, like I think they enjoyed it. The feedback I heard back was that people really enjoyed reminiscing and getting into it. We like set up Valve's IT department were amazing. They set up this PC with like an old school CRT, which I requested, and they were able to pull it off with the game on it. So whenever people came in, we had them jump on the game immediately just to get the memories flowing, and we filmed a bunch of that stuff.
That's super smart. I think like that's the challenge, is like, okay, these people have been telling Half-Life stories for 25 years. Like, how do you make it fresh for them? And like, I always think of, I don't know if you watched that Hulu documentary series called 321 McCartney.
No.
Where it's Rick Rubin interviewing Paul McCartney, which is like, okay, Paul McCartney has told these stories about the Beatles over and over and over again. But the cool idea is he actually had the masters, and so he was playing isolated tracks to be like, hey, let's just listen to the bass line of this song, and you can hear like the background noise in the studio. Like, is this sparking anything new? And it led to like a ton of new old Beatles stories, just to like shake him up out of his rhythm by giving him a different input other than, tell me about the Beatles. What was it like to work with John? You know? But I felt like that there were a couple times in this documentary where I could feel you were kind of kickstarting the memories of like, all right, let's show them the old photos together of like going on that trip to Mexico, or just like having other people walk in the room and like capturing the hugs. Like, yeah, I like that idea of just baking in the tricks to spark some freshness for these old stories for them, because they were all enthusiastic in the video. Like, it really came across.
Yeah, they were. It was funny. You had a mixture of people who had talked about this actively and thought about it maybe from time to time, and then you had people who literally had not played the game since it came out. Like, it was very interesting. And we run into this problem. There's this thing we do, especially because we do a lot of like with NoClip, especially a lot of interviewing people who have either never done an interview or, you know, are just very nervous and stuff. And we do this thing called asking like automatic questions, which is when we sit people down, especially if they're nervous, we'll ask them like lizard brain questions, like, you know, where did you grow up? What type of games did you play? Stuff that like, how did you join the company? Like questions that they don't have to think about at all. It's just, it's part of their internal storytelling, and they're just able to vocalize them as quickly as possible. The problem with retrospective stuff is then you run into that problem where people will just sort of tell the version that they've told themselves, and it can come off as inauthentic or very skin deep or something like that. So for them, it was a lot of like tunneling into the stuff that they found interesting and then asking really tricky questions about it. Like Karen, the texture artist, was our first interview, and she's like probably my favorite interview of the bunch because it was just such an interesting perspective. She had such a particular role. It was such a like a high pressure role. It's such an undervalued role, I think, in the history we tell ourselves about that game in particular. But it's also so important. Like if you imagine we show a bunch of the Half-Life alpha footage and you're like, the game feels it feels like a cartoon when you see that. Right. And when you see the game with all the photo reference, you're like, oh yeah, that's like a large part of the special sauce of this game, is this crazy job from somebody who had never worked in the games industry prior to this job. She, you know, worked at like an art house in Chicago for some famous person who made like quilts or something. It was really interesting stuff. So like, yeah, like with people like that, you're sort of like Rick Rubin, like shaking the bush. You're trying to get some of the stories out of there as much as you can. But they were all very giving. Like I was very generous to everyone. There was people who like flew in from out of state. There was a lot of people who, like, most of these folks are retired or, you know, working in different positions within the industry maybe. And, I was really grateful that they all turned up, and then they had that willingness to talk, like Harry as well. Harry talking about his family situation and his wife Yachts, and I feel like I understood maybe how much work himself and Yahtzee had done on the textures prior to Karen sort of finished like doing the entire game on her own for the last year and a half. Like all that stuff was, and to Valve's credit, like nothing got cut. There was nothing that nice. Like I presented in a cut that they were like, oh, we're not feeling too good about that. Like literally nothing got cut.
That's nice. Final. Yeah.
Stuff got added. They were actually like, oh, we think Mark Laidlaw is being too humble. Can we like big him up a little bit more?
That's funny.
I threw in some extra people talking about him.
That's an interesting detail. Yeah, I like there's that quick line too where the texture artist is like, you know, being the only woman at Valve was not great. And I think that could be a whole documentary in and of itself, but it's like, oh, that's nice to see for a documentary that's paid for by the company, that at least they're willing to throw that line in there or not ask it for it to be trimmed, you know?
Yeah, I had a bunch of stuff in there that was like, you put it in and you're like, here are the things that I'm putting in for me that I feel like if I don't try and get this in, I'll feel like I didn't, I don't know, advocate hard enough for it. Or so sometimes there's parts of the story that you like have to do you really try and do extra work on to make sure that they're justified within the scope of the story. And this is like not just a client thing. This is also like when we're doing internal tests on stuff on NoClip. Like maybe there's a part of the story that I think is really interesting, but I'm like, oh, maybe people won't find it interesting, and you sort of work extra hard to justify it within the edit. And there was a couple of parts like that like Harry's part as well, where I really felt like there was important, like there's a humanity there, and there's a sort of a vulnerability, but you're also playing with the fact that you're really trying not to make, especially with a paid gig, you're conscious of making propaganda and using people's life experience to sort of whitewash and stuff. So there was a very delicate dance there. But I felt like, especially with Harry's story as well, with the photograph of his daughter, like there is a sort of lore about that photograph that exists within the Half-Life community, and getting him to talk about it was one thing, and then the fact that it goes off in this direction that really people didn't like. When he was telling me, I was like shook. I was, you know, because I had thought about that photograph for a long time, and then he was telling me about his daughter growing up, and the difficulty they had. I thought like that was a moment, especially for like the hardcore Half-Life fans, to like really, I don't know, connect really on a human level with the developers, that these are just people who made this game and are these like gods. They're like fragile people who, you know, had difficult times during this and had difficult times for years later, or, you know. Yeah.
I mean, talk about what it would be like if you made this project in your 20s, and watching it, I was like, I bet there'd be less references to the kids and the challenges of like work-life balance if you're making this in your 20s.
You know that in there too, right?
Yeah. It's big softy. I see it now. Sorry, Kelsey, did you have more thoughts on the documentary, just the idea of a company paying for its own history to be surfaced this way? Do you trust Danny's work?
I do, and I'm so glad we've had this discussion about putting people back in, you know, in their old brains, like from when they were working on this. I know when I did a podcast with you at the Video Game History Hour, I'm pretty sure this was you who gave me the tip, ask people where they went to get lunch.
Oh yeah.
I just love hearing. I love hearing these ways to put people back in the time that they were working on things, because I mean, shoot, I couldn't tell you about like 3 years ago, you know, like, and so it's such a psychological art to actually surface interesting information, as opposed to like what you just said, which is just the story they've been telling themselves about, you know, about what they worked on. And so I don't know, I really, really appreciate just your ability to bring some new light to these things, some interesting color. And I mean, I made the joke about the Kirkland Costco, but I mean it. Like, that's not something that probably would have just come up organically when you're like, oh yeah, I was the texture artist and I went to the Kirkland Costco, without some sort of probing or engineering there. So I appreciate it. It was an excellent watch. It's a little over an hour, so pretty...
an hour and 5 we got it down to. The original, I won't say how long the original cut was, because then I'll have people asking to watch
Release the uncut version. Right.
It's like, release the no B-roll version. It reminded me a lot of what the Video Game History Foundation does, and what a lot of like people within just the grander sphere of preservation do, in that like at many points you guys, especially with the projects over the years, you were sort of burdened with the responsibility of being the only person who's going to do this, so you better do it right.
Yes.
So like you sort of, you know, and I was like, oh, I can't believe this door is opening, I better not fumble this one, because like this is and a lot of these people are like getting old, you know what I mean? Like Bill Van Buren's, you know, he's a very spry, you know, dude, and a lot of these folks are very like, you know, Ken Birdwell, they're like, you know, they're compass mentis, they're living it, but like you're thinking, this is probably the last time for a while we're going to get these people together as well, is the other thing. So we tried to squeeze as much out of them as humanly possible.
Hey, mission accomplished. You squeezed him, all right. Let's see,
That's
Kelsey.
the real tactic.
Kelsey, I know you got to get rolling. Any final thoughts before you clap on out of here?
No, thanks for having me on, and Danny, I'm looking forward to whatever's next. This was awesome.
Yeah, hopefully next time I'm in Seattle, we'll pop on by the store as well.
Absolutely.
All right, bye, Kelsey. Thank you.
Bye.
You got to clap out though. Okay, I know we should be done talking about Half-Life, but we aren't. Had you ever interacted with?
You guys Half-Life fans? I'm very interested. If you guys like.
Oh yeah,
I have the box back there. Yeah, but my greatest sin is I've never finished it because I get motion sickness and it just destroys me. It just levels me. But it was like back in the day, like this is the coolest thing ever. I'm going to play this opening again and again until I want to puke level of thing. Yeah. I even like tried watching your YouTube series with Half-Life Alyx. I'm like, maybe I could just watch Danny play it. And then even like halfway through that, I'm like, I can't do it anymore. I'm sorry, but this thing seems sweet too.
My unforgivable sin is like, Alyx is the only one I finished and the only one that I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna go. It's like I kind of appreciate them, but my weird take is like they all should have been VR, and like the Half-Life. When I'm playing Half-Life 2, I'm like, this game wishes it was in VR, which it wouldn't happen for another 15 years. But like,
yeah, I can see it. It's a lot of touching things. It's a lot of like being in a space and yeah, that sort of like intimate detail. I love Alyx. I'm glad you do too. I think. I wish more people had the access to play it, but it's such a special little thing.
They actually someone made, and I think Valve did that thing where they kind of gave it their like stamp of approval. Like there is a total conversion Half-Life 2 VR mod that I've played a little bit of, and it's neat, but it's like, yeah, that game is pretty long, and so it's like an intense VR session.
I couldn't believe how long Alyx ended up being. I remember playing it and being like, oh, this will be as long as the episodes. It'll be like 5 or 6 hours. And it was like 10 or something. It was like, it went on forever. And also it came out like the week COVID happened over here, right? So it was just like
I remember having to do, it was like my first experience doing a drive up order because I had to like upgrade my PC to get it to run. And I remember like going to Best Buy and like having them drop stuff in my trunk, and I was like, I gotta play Alyx. This is like, it's more important than this, the safety of myself and my family.
You gotta do it.
But yeah, just to finish up what we're talking about, like unlike these idiots, I'm a cool smart guy, and I love the Half-Life series.
Right.
And it was just talking to Jacob about how there was a long period of time where I would just boot up the end of Half-Life 2 for like years and just like play through the last like 2 hours of that game all the time.
Amazing.
I love
just
that.
Like with the gravity gun. Souped up one. Yeah, man.
Absolutely.
Kyle doesn't even have red hair. He just dyes his hair orange just to try and be more in the spirit of Half-Life. It's really a bold move.
Gordon Freeman cosplay 24/7. I love it.
Okay, Gabe Newell. Your first time interacting with Gabe Newell was?
No, I met him once. No, technically, no. Professionally, yes. Technically, no. I met him at Gamescom in Leipzig in 2007. And it was a Left 4 Dead. They had a Left 4 Dead 2 bus they were driving around Germany, and
of course
I went up to him and I was like just nerding out because I was like, I don't know, 20 or something, and I said like, Half-Life's the first game I ever completed on PC, and he said that's pretty cool, and we took a photograph, and that was it. So
it's a good game.
That was my interaction with Gabe Newell prior to that.
Was that post Orange Box, or was that right? It was before Left 4 Dead.
Maybe it might have been 2006 actually.
Okay.
I think it was Left 4 Dead 2 because I remember I had the hand with the 2.
Oh, okay. Right? So it definitely was after Orange Box and all that.
I think, it must have been. Yeah.
And so was it tough to get new quotes out of him this time around, or was he just saying that's pretty cool over and over again for every question you asked?
Gabe is definitely somebody who, and I got this impression when I watched other interviews with him, where he has sort of answers to some of these questions probably in his head, right? Or he frames the question you ask in something that he is finding interesting in the current moment, I think, as well. So, but like we needed him by the time we did the interview with him, because that was a remote thing. So I did that on a video camera or on a screen. He was talking to me on a screen. You could see me in some of the reflections in his glasses. And we had there was a gentleman who works for over there for Valve who can go film stuff. So he did an awesome job. Really great guy to work with. And but the interview for that came in near the end. We had done every other interview, so it was a lot easier to do that one because I knew exactly where I was plugging him in.
Right.
It was like, oh yeah, we'll get you to talk about all the founding stuff with Mike, and then I'll pepper you in here and there whenever it makes sense. But there wasn't that much of a burden on him. I think the final line from him is kind of, I think, a good. That's in a way that's a nod to the Half-Life community, because there is this. There was an interview Tyler McVicker did years ago with Gabe. Tyler used to run Valve News Network, and now he does it under his own name on YouTube. And he does a bunch of like videos that are like guessing what Valve is doing next, right?
You know, yeah.
That type of stuff. And a lot of he swings and misses a lot, but he also like he's super passionate, and you know, there's a community around him of people who are very interested in these games. And I really enjoyed watching his watch through of the documentary. In my head, a lot of the time I was like, will Tyler like this part? Will he? Was like my hardcore fan proxy. But he did an interview with Gabe years ago where Gabe talked about the fact that where Valve doesn't look backwards a lot, which is sort of like people are now saying like, oh, it's cool that like this version of Valve seemingly is more interested in doing that. But the final line from him in the doc was just a way of sort of, in a way, explaining his perspective on it, which is that he doesn't really look back very often. Like, he isn't that type of person. So even getting him on camera to do this, I think, was pretty cool. There was no resistance. He was down to do it.
I wonder if there's something to that just for that type of mind. I mean, it always seems like every time you're talking about the past with Miyamoto, which, you know, is every interview that poor guy has done over the last 40 years, but it's always this feeling of just like, I don't know, what, I would just make up Mario lore, Zelda lore, like we're just moving on. It truly doesn't matter, but he'd rather talk about, I'm sure, some weird tech trinket or some toy that's on the shelf at Target rather than the lore of Yoshi. It's like, who the hell cares? We're trying to move forward here, you know? And so that's what maybe it takes to be that much of a visionary.
Was it exciting to get on camera a replacement for the made up Miyamoto quote?
That was funny. So he actually attributes it to, I didn't put his attribution in because I trimmed it, because I liked it just cutting to him and saying, delay is... annoying, suck is forever, or whatever he said. Suck is forever is the funniest one. He did say, I think he knew that it was attributed to Miyamoto, but also knew that that was incorrect, because he attributed it in a really interesting way, which was sort of would have been more confusing to put in the doc, where he said something like, there's a quote that I'm not sure exactly where the original version of it comes from, but it basically goes like, and then he says it. So I think he was aware that it was a quote, but also that it was misattributed. So he was trying to.
It's so funny to like have it on camera, you know, because the Miyamoto one is just kind of like randomly posted on screenshots of him thousands of times a day on Reddit.
Right. It's on a business card for some reason. You know, no one knows why.
It reminds me of the. Do you ever see the Patrick Stewart one where he's sitting down and it's like a quote from Harry Potter? It's like, no. but it's a tribute. But Patrick Stewart's sitting there, and there's like, I think also there's like Firefly. The Firefly ship is floating in the background.
Oh yeah, and it's like attributed to Gandalf or something.
Yeah. It's like that one where it's like clearly, intentionally not accurate. But yeah, that was funny. I didn't think, you never know what people are going to resonate with as well. And I didn't think people would resonate with that part, but then it was like all these articles written like Gabe saying that.
I thought is a good quote, and I forget who said it, but they made it seem like, wow, this is an old phrase or an old I don't know, axiom, is that the word for game development? But I'd never heard of it. Adage, there we go. But the guy who's like, it turns out if you're lucky, good video game companies, they can make 2 games worth of stuff and then throw away the bad game. It's like, oh, that's such a fascinating way to look at it. But like, you're so lucky if you're at a studio that can afford to do that. But that's ultimately what it takes to make a game like Half-Life.
Yeah, it's fun. I love that one as well. And to your point about like some developers, like a lot of developers have trouble talking about the past. And the one I liked, because they just don't remember it. Like, and it's frustrating for them because like they're like, well, the internet remembers more about this than I do. And the one I always love to bring up is with Deus Ex. If you ask Harvey Smith anything about Deus Ex, he's like, I just don't know, man. Like, I couldn't tell you like what we were thinking, any of that sort of stuff. You ask Warren Spector and he'll talk to you for like 5 hours about it, right? So like, it's people just like, it has more to do, I think, with just like our brain chemistry as individuals and the way in which we relate to the world. Like, I'm very bad at like remembering my past. I in a way maybe don't want to, because it's like the past is full of mistakes and things that like I wish I could have changed, whereas the future is this sort of like perfect canvas and anything can go in the future, and that's the way I relate to the world. But then I have siblings or friends who completely see the world in a different way, where the future is this scary unknown and the past is this comforting thing. So people are just like, it's funny. Like people, Harvey would say like, oh, people think that I don't like talking about my old games, but it's like I just don't remember much about.
That's probably the logical way to go. I think I love Warren Spector and love interviews with Warren Spector, but maybe you have to be a little bit of a showman to care that much about your past. You know what I mean? Where I think he enjoys kind of having the patter down, and like it's Harvey is probably the logical route there, because I don't know if you've all had that experience of just being 100% certain about something about your past, and then you see evidence that just explodes your mind. Not too long ago I was remembering like, God, I remember I was on this cover story trip for Game Informer when I learned about like this death about somebody very important to me. And then I was looking at like photos and realizing like, oh, that was completely wrong. I was like a year off. But in my mind, I would have gone to the mat arguing like, no, it was this moment in this time in this lobby. It's like, no, completely not. And so, yeah, maybe they're right. Maybe no one should talk about their past, Danny, and then we'll be out of jobs. Let's see. Beaten Down Brian wrote in. We have community questions if you're down for that, Danny.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course.
Beaten Down Brian writes in.
Talking to me about Half-Life stuff. I feel like I'm cramming the airwaves here.
I don't think people mind too much. Beaten Down Brian says, congrats to Danny and the team on the documentary, and shout out from Carlo.
Yeah, there you go. Do you know what Carlo is?
I assume it's a small Irish town or something?
It's a county in Ireland, just north of where I grew up in Waterford. So good old Carlo. Carlo had the first video game development degree in the country. I had a friend who went there. In fact, I had friends who helped basically did my final year project for me because my coding was so bad. So I went up to Carlo, had them do it, and then presented it and got a good degree. So thanks, guys.
Set yourself free.
Appreciate it.
Aging Poorly writes in and says, hey, team, and welcome, Danny. Hey, Ireland is sorely underrepresented as a video game setting. Danny, pitch me the ideal video game set in Ireland that would take advantage of the culture. And Hanson, Kyle, and Jacob, have you been to Ireland? You have, Jacob?
I have. I was, I think I was in middle school, so it's a long time ago. But I saw the cliffs of Moher and went to Blarney Castle and did all that.
Excellent. All the tourist traps. I like
That's
it.
right.
Yeah. They're good traps, though. They're good fun. My town always gets missed because it's in the southeast. So you do the west coast in the south, and then you go straight back up to Dublin. So we're like Hobbiton. No one ever visits, It's like this quiet little town.
I was just talking with my wife, actually, and Danny, you might want to cover your ears. But we're talking about like, oh, we should go on a big trip. Where we're going to go for this trip. And she's really pushing for like, let's take a train ride through Ireland. Like, that sounds so good. And I have the wrong take, to be clear, 100% wrong take, but my take is like, I want to be surprised by a place. And Ireland seems lovely, but I don't think I'm going to go there and be like, this is completely different than what I expected. And like, that's the level of vacation that I'm gunning for. So Danny, is that condescending and demeaning to your beloved homeland?
No, that's fine. I would say don't. The train system's not great. I'd say get like a car and go to, you can go someplace. You can get to Galway, Cliffs of Moher, you'd have to get a car, and then if you're driving south, you'd have trouble. But yeah, it's more of a rent a car, kind of drive around Ireland. And yeah, I'd say I don't know. I'd say Jacob might be a better version of somebody to answer this. I think it is quite relaxing and like chill, and like, people are generally nice, hopefully, and it's like cozy, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's like, the most exciting place to visit. That's fine.
I mean, I'm not looking for bungee jumping, so maybe it's the right place to go relax and drink a beer.
Do you guys know any games that were set in Ireland?
Folklore?
Nice, you got it.
Whoa, Kyle!
Nice.
Good
What do
pull,
I get?
man.
What do I win?
A copy of Folklore on the PS3.
Yeah,
that game was cool. That game looked cool. Like good art direction in that game.
Yeah, I'm looking it up. I mean, If Found.
Oh, yeah. We did play that. Yeah. That made the two times.
Actually, yeah. The Folklore one I was like, because that's a Japanese studio as well, wasn't it?
I believe so. Yeah, that was like an early PS3 game, if I remember correctly.
And the other weird one is that there's somebody singing an Irish song at the start of Metal Gear Solid, which is very strange to Irish.
Oh, the dun, 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 dun.
Yeah,
really?
That's all in Irish. Yeah. It's
Whoa.
pretty weird.
What are they saying?
Haven't a clue.
Really?
Snake, don't do it. Pick up rations.
What a thrill! Is that, it's just
I think
using
so.
the same
I think
lyrics
so.
over again.
There's a callback.
Exactly,
yeah.
So, a hindy.
So that is the ideal video game set in Ireland. Then is something like a folklore, or what would you go for?
Well,
I don't know. I think
was cool because it was a lot of Irish folklore, like literally, right? Which was like a cool idea.
which I think is a good one. Like I think there is a lot, like Irish Celtic mythology is like pretty badass. Like, you know, you get like your Fionn McCools, like the Hound. There's a lot of like when Christianity was sort of brought over, or Catholicism was brought over to Ireland, there's sort of like the two ways in which you dominate a culture with your religion. You either like destroy the foundation of the culture and history and prior, you know, polytheistic thinkings of the time, or you just kind of allow it to exist as some sort of mythos that perhaps is like, oh yeah, this is our god, but like before that god, there was all this old stuff. Like that's totally okay. And that's kind of what happened in Ireland. We did lose a decent chunk of our history, as far as I know, with some of that stuff, but a lot of it got brought over and retained. And like, that's where you get like, I'm trying to think, like there was a lot of like Tua De Danann stuff that people thought was Elden Ring was sort of inspired by and stuff like that. Some Celtic bits and bobs. I don't think it was as much as people thought when they saw the trailers, but there's loads there. Like, and you know, you hear, you know, the Banshees in Halo, Irish people got a kick out of, because it was like, oh cool, there's Banshees, and you know, it's just the name of a thing, but the scream is there, right? When it turns, it goes like, and you're like, oh, that's, you know, Banshee's just an old ghost of, basically it's just the wind, but it's like the sound of an old crone howling outside your house at night, and it's a way to keep kids from leaving the house and stuff like that.
That's perfect.
There's loads of stuff like that, but yeah, there's loads of like really interesting like Irish mythology that I think like folklore does a good job of pulling on that. But in terms of mechanically, I don't know. Like everyone would, it's a normal thing where everyone would be like, oh, I'd love if Grand Theft Auto was set in Dublin, you know?
Yeah, it's the classic thing.
The one thing I was really somewhat irritated by was when they did the Assassin's Creed DLC that was set in Dublin. So I'm from Waterford in the southeast, which is the original Viking settlement in Ireland. It was the original capital, like before Dublin was done, maybe 40 years later, I think, by Vikings. And like I grew up with like Viking walls everywhere. Like my town was founded in 904, and we'd like skateboard beside, you know, in parts of town that were just, there's the Viking walls, they're right there, and the Anglo-Norman walls were right beside those, and they were a couple of hundred years older than that. But like these ancient like 1,000-year walls are everywhere, and like Viking, you know, the name of the town Waterford is Vedrafjord, which is goat fjord. Like it's super Viking. And I was like the one time my town might get in a game, and they went for fucking Dublin. I was like so annoyed by it. But the Dublin one, that was pretty cool, at least to see some of that you know, stuff in the game.
Elvis Canaveral writes in, they say, what games would you suggest these holidays to play with family and friends that are outside of gaming that would help promote future gaming together? What do you bring home over the holidays that for people who aren't real big gamers is the question.
WarioWare Move It.
Kyle, I'm in the exact same camp. I'm going to bring it over and play with my nephews. And I'm worried about it,
Bring
except
like
for
1,000 Joy-Cons.
And you got to have the straps and the wrist straps and all that stuff. I'm ready to go on that front. But like, there's specifically a mode where the one where it's like, it's a multiplayer mode where you don't fail. You just like get more points if you get it right. It's like a whole gym vibe aesthetic and thing. It's like, I think that's going to be the key, because I think it'd get really frustrating to play WarioWare as a, no offense, stupid little kid, and then just constantly get a game over because you don't know what the hell's going on at the screen at any moment, you know? But I do think that's a good one.
There's always the phone-it-in answer of Jackbox, but there is some good stuff in there. I haven't played the new one yet.
It feels boring, but it's like, yeah, they're always good.
Yeah. TKO 2 is in there, so it's like, that's a lock, right? That's going to be a good time to play with your family if you want to. Order some shirts.
What's the movie one where you write in
What the dub?
Lines? That is one that my daughter, like, that's what she always wants to play over Jackbox is What the Dub. She likes that one a lot.
It's so funny. Yeah.
Is that PC only?
We play it on Xbox.
Oh, great.
Okay, it is.
I mean, it's functionally like Jackbox. You use your phone to play. You know?
Yeah, and then they went on and they did like a licensed Rift Tracks game, like that same team. But I don't know, maybe we're just in a different mood, but we played the Rift Tracks version last year for our charity stream, and it wasn't as fun as What the Dub. There's something kind of pure about that one, you know?
What the Dub's simpler, I think.
There was I was talking to some of the Jackbox people earlier this year, actually. I was wondering if that would be an interesting story to tell, because they're kind of a weird studio. Like it's a lot of comedians. Like it's a lot of like people outside. It's like the Chicago comedy scene is kind of the foundation of it. A lot of them wrote on TV shows and stuff, and it sounds like it's like kind of a very just a different type of studio that's made, which I always like that. The Half-Life one is kind of like that too, where you get a lot of people who aren't traditional game developers in the room, and suddenly some really interesting answers to problems start to appear.
Right. I think I thought about the Jackbox thing too, and I enjoyed interviewing those folks and talking to them, and they're funny. But it's like talking about funny things that happened in that studio. It's not going to be that fun, but like, you know what? If it'd be sweet if you could get in the door and like film the first pitch session for Jackbox Party Pack 11. You know what I mean?
That's
like just
cool.
pull just the pure whiteboard phase of like, what is an idea here? Just come in for like 3 different pockets of that game's development. I think.
And it's just someone in the corner smoking a cigar saying TKO3.
And you know, everybody, like whenever somebody like lobs a sequel, they're like, oh, okay, cool, good idea, Quiplash 4, brilliant, give this guy a raise, okay.
Did you ever hear that This American Life story? It's an older one where they were sat in the office of the Onion for a while.
Oh, that's a good one.
Which was like, it was great because like the big thing that they learned from that story was like the pitch meetings are so sterile.
Really?
And it's like a lot of people, no one laughs. They're just like very analytical. They just instantly are like, yes, that is funny. Okay, but let's change this word here. Like it's really fascinating. I really like that story.
Wow.
That's sweet. On the tabletop front, and it's barely a tabletop game, but I bought it at like a Walgreens, but I've had a really good time with it with family. I think it works well. But Poetry for Neanderthals, has anybody played that? So it's a game where it's basically like a taboo. You get a prompt, you get a word, and you're trying to get people to guess the word, but you can only use 1-syllable words to describe it. And so you end up just sounding like a Neanderthal is the idea. But the hook, especially for kids, is it comes with like a big inflatable club. And so if you say more than 2 syllable or more than 1 syllable, then you get hit in the head with the club. So it's an automatic hit.
Man, that's like that throw burrito.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Playing that was like just a nightmare.
Yeah, we lost a burrito immediately. Yeah, there's no way you're gonna hang on to that. Sean Rubin writes in and says, "Hey MinnMax, what's your favorite musical? I've been on a Sondheim kick lately, and while the 2014 Disney adaptation of Into the Woods wasn't that great, the original Broadway cast production was wonderful." That's good. Yeah, I watched that movie after a lot of hype, and I was like, I don't really get it. I think it's cool structurally, but I don't know. But yeah, favorite musical. What jumps out for folks?
Are you guys musical heads?
I'm getting there. I'm late in my life, in the waning years of my life. Now I'm becoming and realizing like, I've really always liked musicals. I think they're really fun.
I really like the kind of genre pushing ones where it is not simply you tell a story and then people like sing a song, at some point. But like, I remember seeing Billy Elliot is like really good because they do a lot of experimental stuff with dance. And it's like, okay, I've seen people singing before, but like, here's this incredible dance thing. I saw last year or maybe 2 years ago, I saw a new Broadway production of Oklahoma that was touring.
Cool.
That I remember bringing it up, and Joe Juba immediately got like mad because he's like, "Is that the one where they don't have any fun?" And the answer is like, yes, but it's this very weird version of Oklahoma where they like, which is a very kind of like classic. Kind of milquetoast musical, but they like really get in with like weird character motivations and like the inherent violence of the setting. It's really interesting.
Huh.
I've never seen. I think that's one that doesn't, for obvious reasons, maybe doesn't get as much touring in Europe.
Right.
But I've never seen that. That's cool. Weirdly, like Miss Saigon would, and like South Pacific, I guess, to a certain extent. As well. I like a bad musical. I like South Pacific's like a terrible musical, but like it's got a couple of really good numbers in it, and it's just like of an era. I think it for me it depends on what, like, if it's a local production, give me like Sweeney Todd or something.
Yeah.
That's like you don't need a lot of bombast for it. It's kind of silly, and I like the gruesomeness of it works better on a smaller stage. And then if it's like something big, like I think Les Mis only works if you see it like in London, it's like really good, right? It's like this really cool thing, but I think it's like going to it in like a crappy old theater in London where like your view is obvious, like it's kind of an experience that way. I think there's like the setting, I think, makes a big difference.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, the gruesome littleness makes me think of like Little Shop of Horrors. It's like that. I love that movie growing up, and like that's always awesome. Yeah.
I haven't seen the movie of it, so I don't know if it's a good replacement, but In the Heights, Lin-Manuel Miranda's first one, which I saw like pre-Hamilton buzz or whatever. It felt like revelatory in that like people were rapping and whatever, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. And now it's like, because everything has kind of been Lin-Manuel Miranda-ified, it doesn't feel as fresh. But like seeing that for the first time, I was like, this is my new favorite musical.
Yeah,
I wish I had seen it. Like I'd never. And when I sat down to see Hamilton for the first time, I literally did not know they were going to rap. I knew nothing about it.
Really? Oh, that's awesome.
And I sat down and the first number came on and I looked at my wife and was like, is this? And there was a lady behind me who had the same reaction, but like a negative one, like, oh, are they going to rap the entire thing? You know, like some old lady. And I was like, oh, is this all right? Like, yeah. And I think like Hamilton's like kind of played out at this stage in many ways.
Very
you know,
much so.
It's been around for so long and it obviously like took up a lot of, you know, nothing big came behind it, I think was its problem. Like, not for him, just I think in musical circles, the big mainstream success of that show, there wasn't many other big ones behind it. But like, yeah, it is a really well put together show, I think.
Yeah, I really loved, recently I saw a local production of Merrily We Roll Along, speaking of Sondheim, which is my favorite way to experience a musical, I guess, just like you, Danny. It's like, I like to go in completely cold. I've heard the name before, I don't know anything beyond that, and it rocked me. I freaking loved it. And the premise... So it's about a writer of musicals, believe it or not, and kind of a creative partnership. But the cool idea is that it all goes backwards. So the final scene is like, hey, you're big and successful, but turns out you're kind of miserable. And then every scene just jumps backwards in time. And you get to see like all the friendships that shattered along the way to the final result. And so it's like a fun twist because it's called Merrily We Roll Along. And the musical gets more optimistic as it goes, but the only reason that's happening is because you're going in reverse back to in his life before he completely sold out. And like this is a weird thing, Danny. Forgive me for connecting too many dots, but like you had, I think it was just a Twitter thread a while ago talking about how in this phase of your life, all your dreams have come true, and now you need to learn to be content, to be happily content.
Did I write this?
Yeah. Do you not remember this?
I must have been drunk.
But I thought about it a lot where like I feel so lucky at this point in my life, and I feel like I'm a sucker for storylines about people getting successful and getting miserable.
Yeah.
Like it's just a certain genre, like feed me that story 1,000 times, please. And Merrily We Roll Along is that. Yeah.
I think I'm fearful of it, especially in this, like, not especially, maybe it's going to sound like such a first world problem, but like I do feel like a lot of the folks who are like ahead of us generationally in this industry do end up like either sort of, I don't know, discontented or like, or the issue that I remember when I worked at GameSpot for years, seeing like, oh, when you like enter your 40s and you're doing this work, you have to go get a real job. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like you gotta this cheap labor don't play when you've got like kids to feed, right? So I remember, I'm sure a lot of you've had that experience too, where you're just like, oh, I gotta, like, how is it that everyone always ends up leaving when they're in their like mid 30s? I gotta figure this.
But now I wonder, can our generation retire from this job happily? Have we found have we cracked the code a little bit?
I think you can take off the happily part.
Okay.
Can anyone retire at all?
Yeah. Good point. Yeah.
Tom Blackburn writes in, says, what game has the best use of no HUD? I love the getaway indicating your health by the blood on your shirt and giving you directions on your turn signals.
They took my answer.
Oh, is the getaway?
I wasn't even going to say it was my favorite, but I just remember being fascinated by that and then playing it and being like, I don't know if this works, but like I appreciate that they really tried something here. Like the fact that you get health back by just like walking over to a wall and leaning on it for a couple seconds. I was like, I think this is stupid.
That's a cool idea.
They really tried something. Damn it, they tried something.
Yeah, and there's a HUD in the game, but I do really like in Mafia 3 how they like show you where to go instead of just having the line on the road. It's just like they make diegetic signs on the street telling you like, hey, turn here type of thing. I think it's like the same UI designer as Splinter Cell Conviction. Is that the one that does a similar thing, I think, where they put a bunch of signage in the world? But
Mafia 2, I think that's how they dealt with the GPS problem, if I remember.
Is that right? Okay.
Is that your car would automatically do a turn signal, I think.
Okay. Gotcha.
I'm having a false memory maybe of that.
No, that sounds right.
The thing I always liked about Mafia 2 that I remember was like, because if you just like sped through the city, the cops would go after you. So you could press a button to make sure you never went over the speed limit if you were trying to be safe. I thought that was cool. I thought that worked well.
Okay.
Yeah, because there's nothing worse than like getting dinged for, going 2 miles an hour over the speed limit. Like they'd never do that. Like, come on.
There's the thing in Nier Automata where you can tune your OS, and like if you want more space for like doing more damage, you can take out your HUD.
Right.
So it's like you can be like, I mean, it's mostly they don't take up a lot of room, but it's like you can, I'm pretty sure, like remove your health bar visibility in that game, and it gives you like one more slot to like fit something else in. And then there's one of the potential endings of that game where you take out essentially your CPU and then you just die. And then it's like one of the endings is like, yeah, the robot just exploded.
Awesome. Obviously we gotta give it up for the legend, the one and only Peter Jackson's King Kong, the official game of the movie, the best game with no HUD. That game frickin' rules. Just have Adrian Brody yell out, "I have 2 bullets left. I have 1 bullet left," as you're unloading your gun. It's awesome.
Great for those 1,000 achievements as well.
That's right. If you're hungry for achievements, everybody, run, don't walk.
But the answer obviously is Inside.
Oh, yeah.
It just doesn't have any and has no use for any.
I suppose so.
I was always fascinated by. I'd love to do a documentary or have if anyone on Return to Oberdin, because that was a game that like I feel like probably had a HUD for a long time and then was just like, no, you're just gonna figure it out. Get your notepad out.
Isn't the story of that like the whole diary came in like very late?
Oh, really?
I think is what he said, or like I'm not sure which elements of it, but there was some like one of the core components of that game I think was like not in it for most of production.
That's amazing.
Just thinking about old games, Kyle. Remember how last week on the podcast we're like, oh, we should make a show for New Show Plus where it's playing a bunch of bad FPS games and stuff?
I thought you guys did that.
We did it, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought it was a cool move where the first game we played on this bad first-person shooter show was Legendary The Box. Do you remember this game?
Oh, yeah.
From 2008?
I remember that game.
Booted it up. Man, the opening rocked. Like, it was genuinely awesome. It's just a bunch of griffins attacking New York City, like picking up taxis and flying away with them, like ripping cops apart and flying around. Like, it was genuinely like way more engaging of a set piece than any Call of Duty I've ever played. It was freaking sweet.
It's like Pandora's box.
That's the idea,
right?
Yeah, they open it and then a bunch of weird mythological creatures attack New York City. But maybe the rest of the game sucks, but that opening was freaking sweet.
My friend James, who's Hot Cider on social media, has a podcast called Bullet Time that is specifically about this sort of game. Legendary was their first episode.
Oh, wow. Really?
They did a whole kind of like Raven Software thing where they had like Hexen and Soldier of Fortune, and I was on the Wolfenstein 2009. But it's like we used to live in a golden era of like middling first-person shooters that had like one cool idea, and like we need to get back to that.
I'm subscribing to this podcast right now. That sounds
very good,
absolutely amazing. Man, Soldier of Fortune, what a fun game! You just blow people's heads off. I remember in Soldier of Fortune did they patch it where you could, if civilians got shot in any of the American levels, you would lose, but if civilians got shot in that one Baghdad level, nothing happened.
All right, well, it's a different era, Danny. It's different people.
Different era,
come on. RabidLime writes in with an uncomfortable question for you, Danny, saying, Danny, question / hypothetical, you're being given a ridiculous amount of money to do a feature-length documentary on a game / subject that you absolutely loathe. What's the game and how much money would it take for you to do it?
To be honest, like my own personal opinions about a game don't like. Okay, if this was like you're being asked to give a lot of money for like a studio that treats its employees really badly and they're trying to whitewash it.
Sure. All right,
in that scenario, I'm like, then the money question becomes an issue, or like if I could make this and people will still obviously know that they can see this as propaganda. I don't know. I probably wouldn't be able to do it because it would feel like a burden on my soul. But like how I personally feel about games is a lot of the times is not part of the equation. Like we did that Final Fantasy 14 doc. I literally had never played a Final Fantasy game. Like there's loads of projects that we get that like I'm like, oh, I better learn. Like Dwarf Fortress, we've been making a stock for like over a year now, and it just takes a lot of like research and a lot of how how this community works, that type of thing. So there's plenty. Like the Half-Life one was a real slam dunk of like, oh, and I think like because the turnaround on it was pretty quick. I think if I wasn't such a fan of Half-Life, it would have been a way harder project. Right. Like, there was a lot of stuff that I just like inherently remembered and knew, and like what was important to talk about. There was like no research required for it at all.
I mean, I assume the check's in the bank account at this point, right?
For what?
For the Half-Life doc?
Do you want me to just give me my financials right now?
Well, yeah, if you can give them financials, I would love to know. No, but to be honest, if they said, would you do this for free, would you do it?
Oh, that's a really good question. Yeah, probably.
Right.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. I think I sent through the invoice.
But only for Valve Video Game Studios.
That's
you
right.
Can't take advantage of Danny.
Don't get any ideas.
No, that's a really good question. Yeah, probably. Yeah, okay. At no point during it was I like, oh, this is gonna be a great, we'll really squeeze these motherfuckers. Like it was like, I was mostly thinking like, we need to make sure this thing is good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. I don't know. I don't think I've never been like motivated. Like everyone's motivated by money to a certain extent, right? Because we're trying to make sure that like our families are safe and that we're in a good position. And to a certain extent, the whole Secret Tape project is very much motivated by money, and that it is trying to make sure that the team of creative people that I have around me are all able to, like, instead of having to go out and it's like a collective bargaining situation instead of like a lot of these folks going out and doing freelance work. If I, in my position, I'm able to bring in business and then use them, then it puts us in a stronger position as a totality. So that's kind of the long and short of it. But like, yeah, I think I'm mostly motivated by just trying to contribute, as I'm sure many of you guys are, to like contribute to this pastime that has given me so much, and like just trying to, I don't know, do worthwhile shit, I guess.
Oh yeah. All right, what do y'all like for question of the week? We had the stuff that Danny missed out on, surprising moment of your career, big indie boom.
I like when Danny asked me for an Irish game.
Oh, okay.
Folklore.
So the question of the week goes to Danny for asking Kyle a bit of trivia that he can feel really good about himself with. That's not bad. Yeah. Danny, what are you feeling? Is there a question that pops out for you? Favorite musical, no HUD, holiday games, Irish games.
I like the musical one a lot.
I do too.
I like that one too.
Yeah.
You don't often get a chance to talk about that stuff.
Yeah, I'm with you. There we go. Congratulations.
I didn't get to mention a chorus line, but I like that. I like that.
There we go. Sean Rubin, congratulations. You won the I'm 8-Bit prize for question of the week. You just won a double vinyl soundtrack to The Artful Escape. They'll ship it to your damn house. So thanks to I Am 8-Bit. Now it's time for something called Get a Load of This. There's a jingle playing you can't hear, but it's really sweet, Danny.
Oh, I can hear it.
Okay, good. Let's see. I'll kick it off. Hey, get a load of this. I feel like I bring up this podcast all the time, but I really love it. The Game Maker's Notebook podcast. They had a recent episode with David Adams from Vigil Games, and he was talking about his history of Vigil, obviously working his way to... why am I blanking on that game that came out from them this year, from Gunfire, that everybody loves that we haven't played?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Remnant.
Remnant, too. Thank you. But he was telling a story about early Vigil before Darksiders. They were going to make a Sly Cooper game on PSP. And he said that, like, they had Joe Mad's art. And he said that it's, like, some of his favorite concept art ever. But it's like, man, I want to see Joe Mad's art for a Sly Cooper game on PSP.
In 2019, I went to Airship Syndicate to see Darksiders Genesis, and they brought this up as well because they're also former. And I actually took a bunch of notes and was like, I'm going to write a story about this, but I just didn't have enough.
Oh,
because all they said was basically like, yeah, we had plans, we had some art, and I think they showed me one piece of art that they had, but they wouldn't like let me take it, so to speak.
Sure.
You know, to put online. I mean, not literally take it from them. So like, I actually need to go. I want to go check that out because like it was one of those things where I was there to see Genesis, but I was like, well, can we spend like 2 hours talking about this, please?
Yeah,
it's like I want to. So that's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, shout out to Trent Custer is on that podcast too from League of Geeks. Australian guy. One of my favorite interviewers in the game industry. He does such a good job, especially for a developer. You don't expect a developer to be that good of an interview, but he just kills it on that Game Maker's Notebook podcast. Jacob, you got something?
Get a load of this. I assume everyone had the same experience that I did earlier this week when we saw the headline, Aardman Animation only has enough clay to make one more movie.
Yeah, it's like, what?
Which is the people who make Wallace and Gromit, their clay company is apparently shutting down. But I have an update. No need to worry. Wallace and Gromit Studio reassures fans over clay, quote, shortage, where they say, don't worry, we've got a bunch of clay. We have plans for what we're going to do when this company stops making our clay.
I wonder, like that headline just like spread around in such a weird way. It's the same way that like, oh, the story is we're out of pink paint because of the Barbie movie, or it's like, that can't be right. Something's not adding up here, everybody.
I mean, it does. I do think it makes sense that it's like, because Aardman's been around for so long and they're so kind of specific that it's like, yeah, they would have been sourcing it for one company, you know, like forever, and would have built their whole thing around that. But they got plenty of clay, everyone. Don't worry.
Clay for everybody.
I love Aardman, but my reaction to that headline was like, and Chicken Run sequel's gonna be like
the last bit of clay.
I mean, I like Chicken Run fine, but I would have rather seen an original Aardman project. But.
This article does use the phrase sequel to its hit poultry comedy, which I just think is a very funny phrase. The hit poultry comedy, Chicken Run.
I get a load of this. This is just a TikTok that I think falls into the sort of propaganda documentary side of things. Or
Danny's specialty.
But it's a topic that I'm kind of fascinated about. Is that I usually check in with Just Dance every year because it's like a big game for my family to play, and I'm always like, how does this work? Like, what is the process of these games? And there's a woman, she's little Sia on TikTok, and it's her filming herself of just like, here's what I go through to be a dancer with Just Dance.
That's cool.
Like I flew to France. I got there really early. I spend like the morning getting in makeup. I do dancing. I change outfits and do more makeup, and I do another dance. And like, it's a lot of, and it's a lot of like her filming herself and, you know, people holding her phone behind the scenes of her being involved in it. And it's, I just liked that peek into like, how does this is a weird outlier in the video game industry of this very successful game that probably has completely different development processes than most games, because a lot of it is filming people with white makeup dancing, you know. So I liked watching that little, it's like 2 minutes long, and it was just kind of fascinating to watch her sort of go through that process. And it's also that very charming thing where she was like clearly a big fan and very excited and honored to be able to be in Just Dance. So she's like in tears by the end of the day because she's like, I get to be in Just Dance, which is really fun.
That's her Half-Life.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's sweet. Danny, do you have something to share with the class?
Yeah, there's this Irish comedian who started this channel called Bobby Fingers on YouTube earlier this year, I think it was, or maybe it was late last year, where he makes these weird art projects, and they're very funny, like edited. The art projects themselves are crazy. Like the first one he did was a diorama of Mel Gibson being arrested when he got pulled over, and he went on that anti-Semitic tirade.
Speaking of Chicken Run.
Did we?
He did another one where it was a diorama of when Michael Jackson got his hair caught on fire. His most recent one is about, he makes a rowing boat out of Jeff Bezos's face. And it's just, I think because I do a lot of like editing about how people made things that are like very digital and ethereal. The videos are basically just like him. They're like humorous, and like they definitely break the format of what you think you're about to watch, so I don't want to spoil it. But there's genuine like amazing craftsmanship in it. Like clearly he like went to art school and learned a bunch of these processes. So like when he's making this like Jeff Bezos rowing boat, it's all about like the casting and building the frames and all, and it's like watching like a comedy version of how it's made or something. And I just find them completely enthralling. Like it just reminds me of, people are so good at stuff. Like people have just like these amazing talents you never even know about. Like sometimes they're really good at and like you end up finding, like, you know, I remember like my mom's friends were like, to me when I was growing up, were like, they were just moms, and then you find out like they were actually had this amazing life that they didn't get to do or didn't know about or get to celebrate, where they're able to make all this cool shit, and being like people are fascinating, like the talents they have that they don't share. So yeah, Bobby Fingers on YouTube is a a really good channel just for watching cool stuff get made and having a bit of a laugh as well.
Yeah, sweet. Links below for all this fun stuff, including the one pulled from the community Discord channel. They get a load of this channel. Manic T shared this and said, it's appropriately timed for the MinnMax community. It is a tweet about how Twitch is now currently playing The Simpsons Hit and Run. Twitch controls for the open world game The Simpsons Hit and Run, so you can check that out on the link below if you're interested.
Did you guys watch that YouTube series of the guy who remade that game?
I skimmed it. I didn't watch all of it though.
Unbelievable.
Okay.
It's unreal. I think he documented the whole thing. It's like maybe 8 episodes long about him building it in Unreal, and it's like it's really just terrific.
And it's so sad then because like, oh, I made all this, I can't release it. There you go.
Exactly. Here it plays.
Yeah, we did. So we have people choose a game to be declared the champion of for a whole tier on Patreon here. And so Jawar Hello chose The Simpsons Hit and Run. So it's like, and then it won like our big poll that people wanted us to make bonus content about it. The same way like what the NHL 94 doc, right? That was a community poll.
Yeah, it was that one wasn't actually, but Greatest Hits usually is. Yeah,
okay,
like
gotcha.
The Thief one was, and a couple other ones were.
There we go. Anyways, and so so it's like, okay, we're making content about Simpsons Hit and Run. So I reached out to the guy to try and get an interview, and I never heard back from the remake guy. So we ended up posting an oral history of the original game with 6 of the game's developers, which is a fun chat on MinnMax's YouTube channel if anybody wants to check that out. And again, I'm not complaining. I'm thankful for everything. To be clear, it'd be so crappy to complain about something, but it's just for a frame of reference. I always think it's fascinating because like in that interview, they talk about, why the Simpsons Hit and Run 2 didn't happen and why the Vivendi deal fell through, yada, yada, yada. And I think every gaming site shared it as a story, like, IGN and GameSpot, like every site imaginable. And it's always fascinating. And just for a frame of reference, the YouTube video currently has an estimated revenue of $11.29. So I'm just, as a reminder, that's why it's important to support independent games media, because it's nice to be the source of that news, but it don't trickle back to us, everybody, unless people support us on Patreon and help support those types of long form interviews. But hey, Danny, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Sorry, I was a little bit late.
You're fine. Apologies. You're not late for people listening.
I also broke kayfabe and said that I was late.
I'm more angry with you for saying kayfabe on this podcast, but what do you want to plug, Danny?
Nothing. I'm doing had the Half-Life doc. All everyone did for 5 days was respond to me about it, so I feel like very satiated in terms of things that I could plug. I don't know. Like, what you said, support independent. Like a lot of the time, do you ever have those like? This is the opposite of probably what you're asking to do, but do you ever? I always get those like exit interviews on Patreon or the exit surveys. Fill them in. And a lot of the time it's people saying like, oh, I just wanted to like, help someone else out. You know what I mean? Like go support somebody else on Patreon instead. And I think that's like super cool.
Yeah,
like,
super cool.
People do that sort of stuff, especially this time of year. And especially with all the crazy layoffs and stuff that are going on.
Yeah,
in the industry. So no, but yeah, thanks to everyone for all the feedback on the Half-Life doc. It's really cool. And yeah, I'm like everyone else. I'm like, yes, I am aware that next year is the 20th anniversary of Half-Life 2, and I would like to do that one as well. That's true.
That'd be sweet. Let's see. On the MinnMax side of things, we posted New Show Overflow, our bonus episode of New Show Plus last week. It's a fun one where it's Dan Reichert from Giant Bomb and Leo Vader touring Minnesota's biggest candy store. So if you literally want to see Dan just go on a shopping spree at the biggest candy store you can imagine, you can check out that full video on our YouTube channel. It's a fun time.
Does he throw up in it though? I mean, that's kind of key.
Yeah, I felt like I was going to because I went over to his house for the extra live stream for Giant Bomb and I ate a ton of that candy then and I felt so terrible afterwards. Like, why was I thinking eating this entire box of sweets? But the secret is that it was a bit of a drive to get to that candy store. And so Leo Vader and Dan Reichert on the drive there and the drive back recorded a secret podcast that's just those two shooting the shit, and it's a very fun, candid discussion between them, and that is available at the $5 tier on Patreon. We're putting it up on Monday, November 27th. So if you're at the $5 tier on MinnMax's Patreon, you'll unlock the bonus podcast feed, which has a ton of stuff, all of our interviews, early access to this podcast that's ad-free, and then a secret bonus podcast between Leo and Dan, which is a fun time. Also, that podcast feed contains the entire deepest dive on Alan Wake 2, which we have now finished. We wrapped it up. We talked about that game for 9 hours, which feels like the right amount of time to give that game its due for how freaking cool that game is to really unpack everything. So thanks everybody for supporting the deepest dive, playing along with us, unlocking the podcast feed version. And for everybody out there, I see you. I hear you, I smell you. Everyone who's saying, where's Sarah Podzorsky? Get her on the podcast more. We want more Sarah. The answer, in short, is she's on the Deepest Dive for Alan Wake 2, everybody. So if you want more podcasts with Sarah, there's a whole lot of Sarah on the Deepest Dive for Alan Wake 2. So check that out. All right, Kyle, Jacob, you guys got anything to plug?
Listen to the Something Rotten podcast.
Hey, say it more confidently, man.
Listen to the Something Rotten podcast.
Yeah. What are you guys covering these days?
We're doing some spooky indie games that haven't been announced yet, but are about to start. We just finished Silent Hill 2 and 3.
Yeah, awesome. Kyle, got anything going on over at Game Informer?
Maybe soon. I'll have some stuff to plug. Next cover is coming up.
All right.
After like early December.
Okay.
It'll be exciting.
Very exciting stuff. Thank you everybody for watching or listening. Thank you everybody at the Game Champion tier. All these people can declare themselves the champion of any game under the sun. Trampoline Tales is the champion of the game Luck Be a Landlord, which is cheating because it's their own game, but you know what? That's a cheap way to get a plug, so congratulations. Patrick Polk is the champion of PT. No one had claimed PT yet, and when it comes to the next like big poll, I think PT is going to be a real contender for stuff that people want to make a bonus podcast or content about.
You should finish it and release it.
Oh, that's a good idea. So shout out to everybody at the Game Champion tier. Thanks so much. And shout out to Jawar Hello for creating that entire oral history of The Simpsons Hit and Run. It's all because of you. So thanks for making that happen. All right, Danny. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you being on, man.
Always love chatting to you guys. Oh, and I forgot about our NHL 94 documentary. Should be out for free on YouTube.
Sweet.
Probably by the time this goes up.
No clip.
Or if not, soon enough.
There we go. There's a link in the description for all this fun stuff. But thanks so much, everybody. We'll be back next week. Happy holidays. Be good. Have fun. Let's go.